am pushing the button and now we are live. Board games, board games, it's what I'm talking about. Board games, board games, I'm not gonna shout. I am starting off this streaming with a little bit of singing. And if you look over there, you'll see Timea with the gingery hair. Timea is working, studying at Goldsmiths for music and maybe other riffs. And Timea's studying about immersion in games which could be called a distraction from the banality which is life. But let's not get to despondence and mixed up with our strife. But we're meeting Timea, what kind of person are they? We're meeting Timea, hip hip hooray. That's what we're going to do today. Meeting Timea. So I'm talking about board games, board games. We're not gonna shout. Board games, board games. That's what we're talking about. Hey, good morning, or if someone
Good
else is
morning.
watching, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good whatever. And that's why we threw in the towel. And it's like, yeah, if you want to use a towel right now, you want to take a bath, you can do that. You can
Mhm.
be bathing while watching this. I'm not going to stop you. Today we are having Timea Farkas. Am I pronouncing that correct? I should have double checked. I'm very sorry.
That's right. Yes, that's pretty close. That's the English way of saying it, definitely.
Okay, so how? What's the proper way of saying it so people can hear what your name is?
So in Hungary, we actually have the surname and the given name kind of backwards. So it would be Farkas Timea. But even for me, when I'm speaking in English, it sounds weird. So I think Timea, completely fine. I listen to that mostly. How's your name pronounced? I think I've heard it a couple of times on streams, but it would be
So my
interesting to
full
hear it.
name, as in my um, official name, is Behrouz Shahriari. So on Yogi, which I I asked them to actually put Behrouz Bez Shahriari, which at the time I was thinking, are they even going to do that? And a quick hello to Nicholas. It's lovely to see you. And yeah, just talking about names that maybe other people having maybe might have a bit of trouble pronouncing, like
Mm.
Nicholas Strachia. Really sorry. This is the way it is with sometimes not always knowing how to pronounce things.
Mm.
But yeah, Behrouza Shahriari, because in Iran you put the what's this? Farkas means wolf. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Yes. How did you know that?
Well, some of my viewers are quite intelligent people. I mean,
Mm.
they must be to choose, this show. In all seriousness, where, like, who are you? Can you give us a little illustration of the night or morning or afternoon in which you were born and the first 5 years of your life, which I'm sure you have no memory of, absolutely, but I'm just going to let you make it up based on what you've been told, so it shouldn't take too long.
So I'm Hungarian. I was born in Transylvania, which is now in Romania, but it used to be part of Hungary at some point before, I think it was Second World War. I hope nobody's watching who knows history too well, because obviously it's First World War I'm hearing. Sorry for people who know history well. So yes, I was, I think, 3 when my parents actually moved to Hungary. So that's where I grew up. I don't have too many memories before 5. I I think I remember my grandmother trying to teach me how to crawl. That's the only thing I have, like a faint picture of that. But yeah, I went to music school when I was 6. I was there until I was 18, so that was pretty much like a big chunk.
And we're going to hear about all those later years later, when we're properly meeting Timea. I do want to say a quick hello to Xate. It's lovely to see you. Nicholas says it would be pronounced straccia. I guess it's like stracciatelli. That's the kind of food, right? Which Xate says that that makes Xate think of ice cream. And hello, Rob. It is lovely to see you. For the record, Nicholas loves languages, and the Finno-Greek languages are some of Nicholas's favorites. So there we go.
That is nice. Yes, I think at least in school we learned that Hungarian and Finnish are sort of relatives, which makes you think that you would understand Finnish, but I absolutely don't, unfortunately.
It's definitely can be a bit tricky. So let's talk about just setting the scene. Of course, we know nothing about you. You said, and so I'm going to put in some banners. Yeah, Timea, composer, PhD student, check it all out. And recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights. Recent highlights, playing games and other delights. So what have you been up to recently? After failing to teach the crew to family, we went back to Rummy, which we played quite a bit of. I did manage to do my morning walk and my morning brushing the teeth this morning. It's so icy outside. I was grasping onto the fences and making sure not to fall over. So I basically went the shortest block possible, just so I would feel this sense of achievement. Clambering up the stairs, going as slowly as I possibly could, taking really short steps, like a stumbling deer that's just walking for the first time almost. And even as I walked across the grass, believe it or not, it was all frozen, and so just the grass was like crunching under my feet. And there was a bit where there wasn't so much grass, there was a bit more mud, and even that was icy, but that was quite a thing. So just being able to get out, that was definitely my recent highlight and achievement in some ways.
Where are you? Are you in London?
No, right now I'm based up north in Scotland.
I am so jealous of you. I've been wishing for snow for a month now, and it's not coming.
I mean, we've not had snow. We've just had ice. We've had snow falling down, but it doesn't really sit, except for, on some bins and stuff like that. Because on the roads, it turns into slush, and then it turns into ice, and then you are all going to fall down on your behinds.
Recent highlights for me. So I think today is my first day sort of back to work. It's the easing in time where you're like, okay, let's prepare and to do something. But I've been on holiday since before Christmas, and basically all I've been doing is eating, sleeping in. We did play some games. So
people here are going to appreciate hearing what you've been eating. I mean, I know there is definitely a lot of people who are all about the food.
Okay, and I can talk about food, definitely.
Also, a quick hello and good morning to So Crafty So.
What did I ate everything, really. So we have some sort of traditional Christmas foods in Hungary. And so my mom bakes something called a bagli, which I think it's like a yeasted dough. And then you have some filling, and then you roll it up. Like the Swiss roulade or something like that. It looks like that, but it's made of sort of like a yeasted dough. And then you can pretty much put any filling in. But the traditional ones, there is
It
one.
kind of sounds like a donut. Is it basically a savory donut?
No, wait, I could maybe show you a picture. So it's a sweet thing. I think it comes from Austria or Germany, because we usually have those types of cakes for Christmas. I guess because of the empire, the Austria-Hungarian Empire. But it's a really sweet thing. And then let me see if I can.
I mean, would you like to tell me the name of it, and I can look it up?
It's called the bagli.
Oh wow! It looks like taco. Oh no, wait! It's like a Swiss roll almost.
Yes, it's like a Swiss roll, but it's a yeasted dough, and then you get like a poppy seed filling, but it's sweet. So you've got poppy seeds, I think, cooked in milk, raisins and things like that, and then you have one with ground walnuts. It's like a paste, and that's also sweet, and that's the traditional ones. And then some people do crazy things with them, but my mom ventured as far as a chestnut and prune filling, which is my favorite.
Chestnuts and prawn.
Prune, like the
prune. Oh, okay.
I think it's so good.
I mean, with prawns, I'm assuming that you really want dried, long-lasting things in there. You don't want prawns. So prawns would be like the worst thing to have in here, right?
I don't know what prawns are actually.
Prawns, like shrimps.
Yeah, I don't think that would work. But prunes work really well, but you soak them in alcohol. I don't know which one, because I've never actually made this, because my mom always makes them, so I didn't have to. But yeasty Swiss roll sounds, yes, it is really good.
And apparently in Germany, Nicholas says that there might be something very similar.
Yes, I think we do get a lot of our Christmas traditions from Germany. So we have like Stollen. We've had this Christmas as well, which is like
I think what I'm hearing is that people are just starting to get a bit too hungry. So if other people in the chat want to share their recent highlights, then please feel free. Otherwise, Timea, what is the last couple of games that you have been playing?
So I'm going to start with board games, I think. The very last game we played was the Taverns of Tiefenthal. I hope that's how you pronounce it. Which is a game I bought in March when the first lockdown kind of started, and we just haven't played it until like last week. And I think I remember reading some discussions that some people were not a fan of it being modular, so maybe they would have preferred it to be, like a fully released thing when you just play all the modules and that's the game. But we've actually found that it's great, that it's a bit easier at first, and then you just add the thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like a mission-based game, because when you've got so many modules, you can be like, okay, I'm going to start it off easy and then ramp it up, and you get an idea of what's going on.
And I am definitely not the type of player who optimizes, or I don't think I strategize too much in anything. So for me, the fact that it's quite short compared to how much thinking you put into it, I enjoy that. It's always over before I feel like I did everything I wanted, which makes us want to play another one. And I think I prefer that. I would rather play a game twice than start playing in the midway, feel like, okay, let's leave it there till tomorrow or something like that.
Rob suggests that Central Europe has great cakes and pastries in general.
Yes,
and we've got people doing the typical, well, we're a bit Hungary pun. Yes,
I get it a lot. Yeah, but it's true. I am hungry a lot. I like eating, so.
Taverns of Tiefenthal. Nicholas says we found that all the modules together at once got a bit clunky, but only got to play it once because we don't own it.
I will be honest, we've only reached, I think, module 3. So I don't actually know what will happen once we reach the final one. I think there are 5 of them. But we've played the first one a couple of times, and then we've played the second one. So I guess we shall see how it goes once we actually reach the 5th one. You can always kind of go backwards as well. So you don't. The only rule is you have to if you start with the first one, you have to add the second and then the third, so you cannot really mix and match because they build up on each other. But you could stop at any given module, so you could play with 1 and 2, 1, 2, 3, stop at 4 if you don't want to do all of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to go to the last level or whatever if that's not what you want. And yeah, I would just want to say a quick hello to Alex, who just popped up into the chat. It's lovely to see you. And Alex is sad that they came in late and missed the pun opportunity. But yeah, I feel like, so with the crew, which it's interesting because I was talking for a while at the start of yesterday's episode about how I didn't appreciate all the complexity, and for my family, it's just not going to work. Do you know what I mean? It's just too complex for them.
Yes.
The nature of a cooperative game, it's mind-blowing. Like, even just that. The nature of a trick-taking game is unusual, and they are not people who typically learn a lot of rules. They are people who maybe play 3 games a lot. Like, my one parent is always up for backgammon, which is nice, and one parent is always up for rummy, which is, you know, pleasant as a way of passing time together. But eventually it's like, for me, there's not that much to think about. The puzzles get very similar, and it's like, okay, we're always doing very similar things, but at least you get to sit down together and share time, and that's the most important thing. But the point is, just as we don't have to graduate, like, people talk about Carcassonne and Ticket to Ride as gateway games. Now, you don't need to say, okay, this is going to be a gateway game, and you necessarily go to the next level. Maybe those people just want to play Carcassonne and Ticket to Ride, and that's the level that they're comfortable with, and people should be more okay with this. I almost recoil at the word gateway games in some ways, because if someone just wants to stick with that level, if you want to start Taverns of Tiefenfell and just play with 3 of the modules, then go for it, and that's totally fine.
I completely agree.
To feel like you have to do all of them. Same with the crew. I mean, Sates mentioned, oh yeah, if you are enjoying mission number 13, then maybe just stay on mission number 13, and then you play that a bunch of times, even when you've started winning more often than not. It's like, okay, well, sometimes we win, sometimes we don't win, and that's a nice place to be in, maybe.
That is, I completely agree with you. And I think I also remember watching reviews of taverns back then. I always almost got put off by some people saying that they didn't like it, that it feels like that the base game is not, I don't even remember what they said, but not meaty enough, I guess. And that you need expansions for it to really work. And now that I played it, I don't think these are expansions. I think these are options for you to choose what level of intensity or difficulty you want to play at. I think it's brilliant. Honestly, I think more games could or should be like this, where you have the option to play with others. I don't like gatekeeping in games. And I would rather play a really simple game if people played it with me than try to force people to play a 4-hour game just because that's what I would enjoy, which is not even necessarily true, because there are games I don't like, and I had fun because the people around me liked it, and that gave me some sort of joy. So yes, I think, and I don't like saying that I don't like a game, because that doesn't mean it's not a good game. It just means that it's not necessarily my cup of tea. But King Domino is one of these, which is not my favorite, but people around me like it, and then I enjoy it because they like it, and I'm happy that they play a game with me. So yes, they don't have to.
Domino's a beautiful example of something that, yeah, I don't own it. I don't have any desire to play it over and over, and I'm sure that it's, if I continually played it, yeah, I would get tired of it after a while. But as a, hey, do you want to come down and sit and play a game with us? Sure, if it's brand new people, I will always play a game of King Domino. Frankly, if I'm meeting new people, then a shorter game is nice because then you get to learn, well, are these people that you even want to spend time with? I know that sounds bad, but imagine that you're playing a 4-hour game and then after 40 minutes you realize, hey, wait a minute, this one person's a bit of a douche. But, you know, I was playing I'm the Boss, and there was one person in that game who was insanely grumpy, and everyone else was like, this is a wee bit awkward. But because, you know, I'm the boss, at least it's less than an hour, and then it's like, okay, well, now we've kind of, we can still enjoy it, and then we'll go and play games with maybe different people or whatever. But yeah.
Yes, I completely agree. There was a time where a friend of mine and I played a lot of Pandemic, and as I said, I never optimized games, but this is the one game where we always tried to win. And there was this one time where some family came over, and we tried to sort of force Pandemic on them. And people always say the Pandemic is so easy, it's like an entry level, but it's not. It's for people who are not really board gamers or not necessarily used to co-ops. It can get really difficult to get their head around it. And I think I realized that we started telling them what to do. I think that was the last time we did this, and then we realized, no, we shouldn't force a game on anyone just because we enjoyed it at the time. So if anyone is willing to sit down and play a board game with me, I always just try to offer as many options as possible, and then just let them choose one and tell them it's okay if they don't like it midway, and we can stop and then play something else, or not play at all. We could play talk about something or do something else instead if they don't.
Because ultimately the biggest gift you can give someone in many ways is the gift of time, like the gift of togetherness. And, you know, Sate mentions the package of eternal sorrow, which is, for those who are new, I'm not going to explain this, but there's a gift that might be handmade. Sate can say more if Sate wants to. But yeah, it's like not just about what it physically is, but about that reminder that you are worth this time, you're worth this effort, you're worth this love. Do you know what I mean? And I would say that if Pandemic is too hard, if you find that you've got some people who are really experienced and some people who are not so experienced at all, then maybe you might want to move on to Forbidden Island. Because there you go, something which is a little step down from Pandemic, and that's quite nice, so that you want other people to get up to that stage, because this sort of cooperation, I think, is basically multiplayer solitaire, well, single player solitaire, you could argue, by committee, where everyone should be putting inputs into every decision. And what you want to do is you want to facilitate that discussion. You want to say, okay, well, what do you think we should do at this point? What do you think would be the better option here? And rather than think, oh, if you do this and this and this, then that happens, maybe like, oh, what do you think? And you need to learn to almost be a good teacher, like use the Socratic method, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
But oh man, I've started a big rift now. Sate is having second thoughts. But yeah, and we've got some comments about Lake Balaton. I don't know this one. Is it quite pretty?
It is. It is. So in Hungary we usually call it the Hungarian Sea, but it's a lake. But it's a really big lake, and I think a lot of people, especially from Germany and other parts of Europe, usually go there during summer. It has some really nice parts. So yes, I definitely agree. That's one of the nicest parts of Hungary.
And we've got Nicholas, who says that they would definitely like to try out Taverns of Tiefenfall again with a bit less stuff.
Yeah,
oh, sorry.
No, that's right. Yes, we do tend to play certain games in certain seasons. So I think this time of the year, something about a pub is quite a cozy feeling game. So I recommend it with less stuff and then with a cup of tea. or beer if that's your thing. I go to pubs and drink tea. I confess that.
So you're not a drinker at all.
No.
Are you complete teetotaler?
Um.
When was the last time you had alcohol?
Oh, I don't know. I think maybe I had like one glass of something a couple of years ago, but the last one I actually remember was maybe about 4 years ago.
So, yeah, let's talk about. Let's actually. What made you stop drinking? Was it, or were you ever drinking, or did you always just decide that you aren't ever going to drink?
No, I used to actually. So I was never. I don't think I've ever drank excessively. So nothing in particular made me stop drinking. There was a time where I was working in a theater, and I worked there as a competitor, which co-repetitor. I don't know if that's the English word, but you know when you kind of teach the songs to the actors and then kind of accompany them on an instrument.
Conductor?
No, that's the person who kind of
Choreographer?
that's what, no, I don't know. Maybe let's go with that. That's close enough.
Like choreographer's normally the person who organizes the dances and decides the dances and the movements.
Yes, or we could just call it the singing teacher. Although I don't sing too much, but I was helping them learn the songs. And usually the schedule in a theater was like you woke up really early, and then you went in, you had all the rehearsals, and then you finished the rehearsals. Maybe you had a show. Mostly the actors, not me, but they had a show. And then after that, you started drinking. And so basically what I was doing is drinking maybe 8 or 9 martinis whilst playing poker competitively in the theater until 5 a.m. And then at 7 we started.
Wow.
And I think that was one of the things that did it for me. I just felt like it's not really healthy to do that. And so after that, I just didn't really want a drink. I didn't feel like I still had some in social gatherings or Christmas, I had a little Baileys or something for a few years. And then I think gradually stopped drinking to a point where wherever there was a drink on offer, I just didn't feel like taking it. So it was not so much a conscious decision, but more like I didn't feel like drinking. And then, you know what, I think it came together with a point in my life where I felt like I don't have to drink to please other people in a party.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm old enough to say I've been to Vietnam. I don't have to drink for your pleasure. So
yeah, if someone says please take a drink, then everyone should be able to say no. And I remember one time actually when I was at university for the first time, because I went back a second time to finish off the degree. But anyway, I was, I don't know, maybe 19, 20, and 18. I was more than 18 because certainly 18 is the legal drinking age in the UK. But so I went to this club and I didn't feel like drinking, but I wanted to see, like, could I drink? Could I join in the atmosphere, if you know what I mean? Could I pretend that I was drinking? And so what I did is I just pretended like I was drunk. And so I acted like I was drunk, and then, I was silly. I climbed up a lamppost, and I acted like I was being drunk. And then the next day, I told one of my friends, and they said, "Oh, that seems like a really jerky thing to do, because making a nuisance of yourself." And what's the difference between me climbing a lamppost if I'm sober, between me climbing a lamppost when I'm drunk? Do you know what I mean? Why should one be acceptable and the other not? Because if you're drinking, you should still have to take responsibility for those actions.
Yes, that is completely true.
And at this point, I do really enjoy mead. I've actually got a bottle of mead that I completely forgot about. I think it must be there. Maybe I brought it up in 2019 after Essen, and I've got like a few bottles that I've still got in London. I drink this very slowly. Occasionally it's like, yeah, you want a little bit, and just having a little taste, and that's something that I enjoy. But I know some people who get so drunk, and I have had this happen to me once, where I got so drunk that I actually forgot a section of the night when I just lost it. Do you know what I mean? I
Yeah, that's
remember walking along the road. I remember, so we drank a lot before going to someone's party. I drank maybe more than half of a bottle of spirits. I can't remember what spirit this was. But then while walking along the road, I remember leaving the first flat, and then I remember waking up and coming to, and I was on this veranda, and there was someone looking at me in a concerned way. And that's really not a great thing, because then you're putting other people out. Even if you have a good time, people say, oh, it's not a good night unless you forget it. Well, what's the point of a night if you can't remember it? Why bother building up these memories? I mean, these like if I want to call them interviews, these chats that I'm having in the morning, it feels like we're going to remember this, like we're going to forge some sorts of memories, and I feel connected as a result. If I were to get drunk, okay, let's set aside the fact that maybe I wouldn't be able to conduct myself as well, but also if I, for some reason, forgot all of it, then what's the point?
I do agree. Yeah, I do agree with you. And I never actually, even when I was drinking alcohol, I was more interested in taste than effects. So I think it is because I used to work in coffee at some point. I just got used to tasting everything and focusing more on the flavor than whatever effects I would get from drinks. So lately, actually, just because I enjoy mixing cocktails, I've been into alcohol-free spirits, which are kind of on the rise recently. So I think there are a few companies that experiment with alcohol-free spirits, and I quite enjoy those because they do have their unique taste. They don't remind me of alcohol. I don't even, like, it's been a long time since I drank, so I don't actually try them for the same like a replication of flavors, but I'm more interested in, oh, this is a new thing, how I can mix this into something. So yes, I do enjoy tasting things more than getting a sort of effect from whatever I consume.
Remember when I went to a bar or a club, I was always, okay, what's on the wall that I've not tasted before? And I would go for that. And still now, if I go into, oh, well, it's been so long, I was going to say if I go into a pub, but you know, back in the day, true story, I used to go to Juggatere in Waterloo, Victoria kind of area. It's technically Victoria, but anyway, I used to go there. Maybe there was a playtest once a week and an additional one once a month. I think around a year ago, I decided that I was going to go less, but I still went maybe 2 or 3 times a month. And when I went, I would always order one of the guest beers, because they have these guest beers and then every month they change it. So they've maybe got 2 or 3 new ones every year. So if you only go once every 2 weeks, then brilliant. Every time you could be tasting something new, and that's lovely. And so, yeah.
Yes, that's what I would have been doing. I think the last time I drank beer, I was always going for the guest ones and then asking them what flavor notes they have.
Nicholas, going back to your term that wasn't choreographer, Nicholas knows the term from German. It's a person that plays the role of live band or full soundtrack, so to speak, for the singers to rehearse. Usually they do piano accompaniment for the rehearser. And Alex asks, is that a braggadocio?
Maybe. I only know the Hungarian term because I've never actually done this in the UK, so could be.
Well, let us move on. So, and a quick welcome to Oliver. It's lovely to see you over on YouTube. And brilliant things, brilliant things. What's the little thing which is brilliance? So you have a thing which I think is something that people who have it should feel insanely privileged. We have one of these here. We have one of them down in London, and I almost feel like this is, Yes, such an amazing device. And what is it, Timea?
It's a dishwasher.
Mm.
I love dishwashers. I think if you had one and then you didn't have one after that, you will definitely, Happy New Year, you will definitely appreciate having it. And especially since I've mostly been working from home even before lockdowns, I think I spent so much time washing dishes, especially when you have a small kitchen. And then your dishes are piling up, and then you're trying to do work, and then you go to get a glass of water from the kitchen, and you see like a mountain. And then it's really hard to resist not doing them. And then you're kind of a bit like, oh, I don't want to work anymore. That's what happened. It
Mm.
might be different for others, but
It's
for my
like if you have a dishwasher, you can put something on a plate and then put it in the dishwasher, and then you don't have to take a break from the work, and then you can
Mhm.
stay in the flow. Because
Mm.
there's definitely some places you were mentioning before we started that if you leave the dishes for half an hour, then ants will be on it like nothing else.
Yes, that is true. So I spent a year in Southeast Asia, in Cambodia and Vietnam, Singapore, and before that, I would think I was a bit of a spoiled child, I guess. So my parents really didn't make me. They didn't force me to clean up things. But when you go to places where if you leave a plate, then you would have a lot of ants on it. You learn how to do housework for life. So
Mm.
so yes, and then we spent most our time, and I also love cooking. I think that's not hard to guess about me. And so I usually spend my lunch break cooking, and then after I cooked, I used some substantial amounts of dishes. I don't want to spend like another hour just washing the dishes. So yes, dishwashers are amazing. I was quite lucky because mine was partially a gift from my mom for my 30th birthday. She just asked me what I wanted, and I told her, Mom, if you can help me buy a dishwasher, that would be great. And then people kept telling me that it's not so exciting. Are you sure you don't want something, I don't know, like a board game? And I was like, no, I buy all the board games for myself. I just want a dishwasher.
Yeah, I know there's two schools of thoughts on board games, and I think it was Jess who was saying that Jessica Hancock saying, "Yeah, please buy me board games. Like, if you buy me board games, probably I will enjoy it." But yeah, it depends at what points you are, because if you're someone who has enough board games to last a good few months, then it's you have the ones that you really want. And when there's a new board game, it's like, well, does this actually fit a niche that my
Mm,
other board games aren't supplying? Whereas
mm,
if you don't have a dishwasher, well, boom, your dishwasher is giving you functional utility, and it's giving you more time. It's allowing a
mm.
robot to do the work that you don't want to do. And yeah, we've got
Especially if
Team
you
Dishwasher here.
especially if you need a clean table to play the board games on. You know.
Exactly. Dishwashers. If there's someone over, and back in the days when I used to have like maybe 8 people over, I think, how many did, I'm trying to think what was the maximum we had. One, two, three, four, five. I think we got up to 9 people once. And sure, I'm willing to cook a stew for 9 people. If there's like 9 people, oh, great. I will get some party games out. We'll get some games that can take that many. Maybe like a couple of people will want to team up, and then we can play between two cities or
Mm.
something that's a bit less of a party game. But then suddenly, having a dishwasher, you
Mm.
just chuck it into the dishwasher and away you go with your game playing. So let's hear it for dishwashers. That was a brilliant thing.
Thank you. Oh, that's also the name of the section.
Yes,
Oh.
dishwashers are brilliant things. So now, for anybody who's in chat and has any questionably quick questions, who wants to be asking, well, Timea, where exactly are you? And what
Mhm.
time is it right now?
I am in Westcliff-on-Sea, which is, I think, a part of Southend-on-Sea. So it's just Essex, Tier 4 Essex. That's where I am. And the time is, what is the time? 10:37.
Nice. So we are both based in the UK,
Mhm.
and Alex says our dishwasher is rubbish. You have to wash half the stuff by hand afterwards, so it's barely worth it. That
Ooh,
does sound pointless almost.
I don't want to sound patronizing, but did you clean out the strainer in it? You probably have. So I'm not saying you didn't, but I found that whenever ours starts to clean a bit less effectively, you have to take out the strainer and then clean it.
Yeah, make sure that you also put the salt in it,
Yeah,
and
so yeah.
you've got some dishwasher cleaning things that you might want to run like
Mm.
every so often. Okay, so Oliver asks, instrumental music or music with lyrics?
I'm gonna say instrumental music, although I come from a family of opera singers, so I think hopefully they will not take offense. I write instrumental music, but I do listen to music with lyrics as well.
And Alex has unfortunately tried everything,
Oh
and it
no.
just doesn't work. I'm so sorry. Alex asks, would you rather have a great morning or a great evening? Why only pick one? I mean, this seems like such a mean question, but
Morning. If I don't have a great morning, then my whole day is usually not great. And my partner keeps telling me that you shouldn't, like, if your morning is not great, you shouldn't get stuck in there and try to overcome it and then just continue the day. But for me, it's a bit hard. Sometimes if I have a bad morning, it's just like, oh, I'm not going to do anything today.
Oliver also loves instrumental music and is asking, what is your favorite color?
Ooh. I think with favorite things, I'm really not a loyal person. So I change my favorite everything all the time. I had a long phase of aqua, the teal and all the kind of shades of teal. I think I'm over it now. So I like yellow and orange, and I like orange with slate gray as a combination. I think, yeah, that's sort of.
Do your clothes reflect your current mood, or are you more of a utilitarian person who just buys things and then keeps them going for like 10 years?
Both. I think I have a lot of clothes that are sort of practical. Like I have like dark blue clothing, like a lot of it, because you know how it is. Like you buy one thing and then you buy another thing that matches it, so you kind of wear them together. Like I have a winter coat that's dark blue, which kind of resulted in having like a dark blue-ish or blue hat, and then everything else was blue. And then I usually keep things until they are still functional, or until you sometimes gain or lose weight. So some items I get rid of in that case, some I keep in the hope of kind of getting back in shape after that again. I don't know. I have my favorite items, and I certainly wear them for mood. So I wear this whenever I want to be sort of like in an open kind of mood. I don't know. It's a good question. It really made me think, actually.
So it sounds like you have enough of a variety of clothes in your wardrobe that you are able to express yourself through a variety of different colors.
Yes,
But
I
you
think
will
so.
keep something until it frays and starts going away.
Yes. Also, I do have my favorite types of clothing items. So I have a lot more jumpers than I need, and I have a lot less jeans than I should have. So I think I don't know. Like I don't really need too much convincing to buy a new jumper or a comfy sweater. But if it comes to certain types of like, I don't know. I don't like buying jeans that much. I think it's a bit harder to find the right pair, if you know what I mean, than to just buy a nice looking sweater.
Yeah, and it feels like if you've got something with legs on it, whether it's jeggings or trousers or leggings, they have. Also, anything that's kind of meant to grip your body, like maybe a t-shirt to some degree or a vest. And I don't mean like a vest like the Americans call it, like a waistcoat. I mean undershirts, as the Americans might call it. But yeah, these things, it's more important. I mean, let alone obviously the pants, as I call it, like underwear. You know, any sort of underwear, it's super important that it fits you perfectly.
Yes.
It's almost like the closer it is to your skin, the more important it fits you perfectly. So once it gets to the jumper, it's like, hey, it doesn't matter if this doesn't fit me. And almost the same with a loose-fitting skirt. If it's like, okay, you know what, as long as the hem is broadly correct, then it doesn't matter. Sorry, not the hem, the waist. Like, then it doesn't matter too much about the hem.
Yes, I completely agree. Although I've never actually wore skirts too much, I think, and for one reason, which was, again, I don't know if it's true anymore, but when I was a child, if I wore a skirt, I had to have like a legging, but the one that, you know, has like ties. That's what, ties. You had to kind of wear ties, and I hated those. I was always itchy. I don't know, they were never kind of, and then, you know, they kind of slide down, so I kept pulling them up, so that put me off of skirts for life. Although now I realize that you could just wear leggings, so maybe
totally.
one day. I'm not saying no, you know, like I feel like I'm only 31, but I say, with, you know, when you're aging, you kind of suddenly start doing things that you thought are not for you like 5 years ago. It's like I recently started doing embroidery, which I always thought, it must be boring, and then I did it, and it's the most relaxing thing. And it doesn't need to be perfect. I don't feel like it needs to necessarily be art for me. Just kind of like relaxing and then doing something that's not on a screen. So that's the same with skirts. I can see myself wearing them in maybe 5 years' time. You never know.
Fair enough. So, not just yet, but watch this space. We've got. I'm going to finish up the questionably quick questions in a minute. So, Oliver asks, hot or cold drinks?
I would say 80% hot. I used to be a barista, so I have, like, even in Vietnam, I drank my coffee hot. And when I say hot, I mean in the perfect temperature. So for coffee, that's about 93 degrees for me. I don't like burning drinks.
Yeah, like, it shouldn't be scalding. That's just why. Weekdays or weekends?
That concept doesn't exist for me. It's because I've been working for home, and I'm at least partially an artist. Like now, I'm sort of also an academic in training, but I am still an artist. I work whenever I feel like it's a work day for me. So sometimes I work through weekends, and then I take Monday or Tuesday off. So either I don't. Sometimes I don't know what day it is.
Okay, and I'm going to have to plug in my laptop. Whilst, can you tell us what makes a perfect coffee? Because I know that Hannah Maria Jackson Phelps said on Twitter, I know Anna Maria probably won't be watching because it is super early in America, but can you describe what is a perfect coffee?
So the perfect coffee for me depends on the time of day. So if I'm not mistaken, we will have a section about a typical day. So I don't want to spoil that too much, but I always start the day with a filter coffee, which is hand brewed. So I make an AeroPress. I don't know if you know what an AeroPress is, but it's kind of
the thing with a metal thing, and then you screw it into another metal thing, and then you put the coffee at.
No, it's two plastic tubes. It looks like a syringe a little bit.
Where it's got like kinds of holes in one bit. It's kind of like a plunger.
Yes, that's the one. That looks like
I've seen those.
So I make that in the morning. And I think when I started out as a barista, I used to have like that's great. I used to have small accidents, so I just had it all over the place. But by now, I think it's been a while since I've been doing this every morning. So even when I'm kind of like a zombie, I can make a good AeroPress to start my day.
And then just because it's a bit easier to handle.
And then nowadays, so this is kind of a new thing. I was always more like team coffee than team tea. And nowadays, through the day, I do have a cup of tea. So that's also been going recently. And then after lunch, I drink sort of like a flat white or like a macchiato, depending on. Sometimes I want a bit more coffee and a bit less. So I have an espresso machine, so I make my own flat whites.
Xates always has a daily cuppa or two with an electric mocha can and a sweet bean grinder.
What is a sweet bean grinder? Or is it like a sweet bean grinder?
I'm assuming maybe, Xates is using sweets as in, this
Yeah,
bean grinder is totally sweet.
Oh, that's nice.
Oh,
grinding, Grinding fresh is cool.
Okay. Sweets has modifier like cool. Yeah.
Nice.
Check out my sweet bean grinder. Yeah, in the house.
Nice. Yes, I do agree. I think grinding fresh is a good thing to do if you have a good grinder.
Okay. I asked you before the show if you've. So that concludes our questionably quick questions. And hello, Scott, who is just waking up with a mocha pot coffee. Wish I had a real espresso machine.
Good morning, Scott. I will be honest with Scott. Making an espresso first thing in the morning is a bit. I feel like I usually need more brain power for that, so that's why I drink that in the afternoon.
If you are in Twitch, then you can guess. If you are not in Twitch, then get yourself over to Twitch so you can get some Bezzy bonus points. And I am going to sing a short song that I wrote this morning. And this is about a game. And guess which game it is. And so, Timea, maybe if you just tell us when you think you know. Don't actually spoil it for everyone in the comments, but anybody in the comments, feel free to just shout, by which I mean just type it in as soon as you thought of it, because no matter how loud you shout, I probably won't be able to hear you because, geographical differences. But don't guess twice in a row. That's the only rule. Have we already... Okay, so this should be in a minor. Forgetting fuel for factories is really not what we need. Fiery furnaces flame from coal and garbage in this game. Finally fuel free, getting some green energy. Flashy filling frenzy, your network gives a monopoly. Fear not, the fuel we got will feed the needs of this feisty lot. Fate won't wait, fans demand fiendish maps and frankly quite a lot. Feeling feisty foes will keep winning because those failing factories are all I can manage, but please fund in future fuel I buy first and that's the two. Fancy fighting freak, I am lost but I am not weak. Fear not, the fuel we got will feed the needs of this feisty lot. Fight won't wait, fans demand fiendish maps and frankly quite a lot. Okay, so I normally give people 1 or 2 minutes before since the first ever guess. And Alex, you need to go onto Twitch. Get yourself onto Twitch if you want to type that. So, Timea, have you got an idea what this game might be?
I've never played a factory board game. I have one that came to mind, but I'm feeling like maybe I might be wrong.
I mean, I might be using some artistic license to make the F word work. I mean, I'm just going to say that fabled fruits. I see what you're doing. You're thinking, okay, I'm thinking of Friedman Fries and factory fun or factory funner. That is very close, and maybe it is more about that, but that is not the game that I was thinking of. 504, great game. That is not what I'm thinking of. Barrage or Fearsome Floors or Brass Birmingham. That is not what I'm thinking of. Okay, so Alex says that if Alex is in Twitch, Alex can't listen to it. It's just buffering in Twitch. Oh man, that's a shame. But Alex did guess Power Grid. Power Grid, Funkenschlag, both of these are correct. This is exactly what I'm thinking of. So, yep.
I did really
Come
like.
on, just give Nicholas the point, says Rob. Yeah. So, whilst I mute myself and give people the points, can you talk? And so, congratulations, Nicholas is getting 1,000 points, and I am also going to give Alex and Xate 500 as runner-up prizes. So, yep, congratulations to those who mentioned it. And, yep, please, what's a typical day like for you?
So I am going to assume that you would be more interested in my actual work day, typical days, than the holiday sleeping in and eating type of. So normally when I'm actually working, especially when working on projects, I like getting up quite early. So I think for spring till autumn, it's more like 6 or 6:30, and then autumn through winter, it's more like 7. And then I always do yoga. That's the first thing I do. Actually, if anyone here is into yoga, there is a channel on YouTube called Yoga with Adrian. She has like a 30-day yoga journey every January. I've been doing that for 4 years now, and it's always really great. It's not so much about getting fit. It's more like a self-discovery type of journey. But it starts off the year well for me usually. So that's what I'm doing these days. And then after my yoga, I brew my AeroPress. And then I have breakfast and I start composing music, which is something I actually started this autumn because I felt like, I always felt like if I did something that wasn't so much my PhD work, I was procrastinating. But then I started getting unhappy not being creative. And I figured that maybe the best thing would be to just try to have a better schedule and then get up at the same time every day and then start the day with composing. So I do that in the morning until maybe 10 or 11. Then I have a lunch break where I cook, eat, and then walk the dog. We do have a dog as well. And once I come back from there, I start my PhD work. So I had some trouble with scheduling in the past. So I think these days I have a rule to do one work thing each day. And sometimes it turns into more. But I think if I convince myself that it's like, this is the one task I really need to do, whatever that might be, I at least sit down. And once I'm there, it gets easier to actually do more things. So, and after work, I think it's afternoons or late afternoons or evenings are kind of free for all. So sometimes we play board games. Sometimes I play video games, or I do whatever. I don't know, embroidery lately, whatever I'm into, because I am more like a serial hobbyist. So I get into hobbies really quickly. It's like I see an exciting things and I'm like in there, which comes with a really bad habit of also wanting to buy every professional equipment you can get for it. But fortunately, sometimes I can kind of convince myself that I don't need that necessarily. So yes, I usually get into new things quite easily. some of them stick. So like board games is actually the longest hobby I've had ever, probably, other than music, which I consider my job. And then whatever I'm into at the time. And then evenings, I just spend it with my partner and the dog. We watch movies, read together, whatever we want to, essentially.
That sounds like a lovely day. Managing to engage with things you love, having that companionship of your partner, and I hope that it's a good relationship, of course. I mean, since you've been together a while and you say that the dishwasher is half your partner's.
Yes, we've definitely been together for, I think this is going to be our 4th year in February, which I consider, this is my longest relationship and the best one, so hopefully. I would love it to last really long.
Oh. Scott's been doing Ashtanga yoga for 20 years, but not at 6 a.m, which is far too much like Hungarian early mornings.
I don't know if Hungarian morning. I don't know. I've only started waking up early once I sort of passed 25. So I don't know if it's a Hungarian thing or not. And I feel like that the earliest it is, the more energy I actually have for yoga. But it depends. There are days where I just do 10 minutes. As long as I do it, I think, whatever, like however short it is, as long as I do it every day, I keep the habit. So it's been going on for about 5 or 6 years for now. But whenever there is something like this 30-day yoga journey, I do a short one in the morning and then I do a longer one in the afternoon. So I do agree that there are definitely certain yoga flows that are too much for the morning. Like you definitely need some food for that before, I guess, a couple of hours before. I did some, I don't know if so I don't really know, because I do at-home yoga and I usually do videos online. But when I was in Cambodia, I was doing Ashtanga yoga, the full 90-minute. And yeah, I couldn't walk the next day for the first few months. So I agree that that's not the type of yoga I do in the morning. Before anyone thinks I do 90 minutes, that's just not true. I just do a little bit. So anything between
like 15 minutes. Oh, sorry, you were about to say.
Anything between 10 minutes to a half hour is what I do in the morning. And then there are periods of times in my life, this is not constant, but there are some months when I would do something longer in the afternoon. So yes, I'm kind of like, I would be grumpy if I couldn't do my morning yoga, but otherwise with the afternoon ones, I'm pretty flexible. So if there are months when I just feel like doing a second type of physical activity, like sometimes I take up running on and off or anything else. And then other months, I'm just happy that I have something constant, that I feel like I did something for myself in the morning, and then I feel better, I think, for the day.
I already talked about how icy it was this morning when we were live, didn't I?
Yes.
And I had my resolution to have a walk before I stream every day for January. I'm just going to try and keep this up for January, and then I'll reevaluate. But honestly, like, if in a few days, well, frankly, I can't imagine it getting much worse than it currently was. Although we will probably have to throw some salt down on the steps in front of the house just to get to be able to make it up the steps without holding onto the banister like a death grip. But yeah, I feel like, sure, in terms of exercise, it might be actually better to do some cardiovascular in the house, because today there was no way I could get that heart rate going. Sure, my heart was pounding, thinking, oh, might I slip and then crack my head? But my heart was certainly not pounding because of the rate at which my muscles were moving. But yeah, I would like to do some sort of regular workout, and when I have access to it again, maybe like start up swimming in 2021 and do regular things. And I think it is such a wonderful way to get the day going, because people have talked about the correlation between healthy body, healthy minds. I know it's let's move on, because we have already been chatting for an hour, and I would like to learn a little bit more about you and who you are. And so you started, and hello, Matt. It's already lovely to see you. And congratulations, Ksate. That's really good. All right, because I know Ksate was trying to be more active. So I'm trying to keep Ksate accountable. So well done. I mean, see it as an opportunity to do more exercise rather than, oh, I've got to go to the post office. But yeah, you talked about you were born and then you moved to Hungary fairly early on, and then you stayed there for the bulk of the years. You stayed there for several decades, I guess.
I did stay there until I was 21, when I moved to Sweden for a year. Then I moved back to Hungary. Then I moved to the UK, and then I was already here for about 2 years when I moved to Asia for a year, and then back to the UK. So I think this is going to be my 7th or 8th year in total, I think, in the UK.
Nice. So what kind of passport do you have? I mean, that's an easy, if you, all of these questions, feel free to say pass if they get too personal further down the line.
No, I don't mind these at all. I don't have I have a passport, but it's expired. So technically I don't have
I just noticed Alex is a wee bit behind everybody else watching on YouTube. There's a bit more lag, but Alex suggests get your heart racing by giving yourself a fright. Ask your friends to put a model spider in your fridge at random moments. Top tip.
Or have a dog like mine. You get your heart rate up all the time.
But so sorry, you were talking about
my passport.
I was just asking you, what's your passport?
So it's a Hungarian passport. It's expired, and now I think, because we've probably, I guess we left the EU. I don't read the news often because they upset me, but I have a national identity card, which is Hungarian. I don't think I can use it anymore, but it's okay, because if I really had to travel, I don't I like traveling, but I don't like being on transport, if you know what I mean. I'm afraid of flying, even though I like going to new places. So this is actually a great excuse for me not to go anywhere, which it helps with my issues with flying and trains. I'm also kind of afraid of sometimes. So if I really needed a passport, I could just go to London to the embassy and then get a new one. And I've been thinking about becoming a British citizen, since I do feel like the UK is more my home than Hungary, even though they both have their issues. But I found that whatever place you feel like your home, it's like you don't, I mean, of course you care about whatever is going on, but you're like, yes, this is what it is, but still I feel like this is where I belong. So I've been thinking about getting citizenship, but it's really expensive. I think it's about 1,400, something like that, £1,300. So for both me and my partner, it would be kind of a substantial amount of money just for documents. Yes, I can be in the UK because my national identity card. Also, I have the, what is it called? You know, when before
green card?
No, I didn't need that one because Hungary is in the EU. You don't need a visa either, because if you've been here for some time, there was the settlement scheme, they called it, I think. So it's like before Brexit, the government had an EU settlement scheme. So if you've been living in the UK before Brexit for a couple of years, then you applied for this, and then they just gave you a settled status. So that's what I have. I have a settled status, which is great. I think the only real difference between settled status and citizenship is that I could vote in national elections. And I mean, there are days when I feel like it would worth £1,000 just to go and vote. But then most days I'm like, okay, well, I could use that for something else. So I don't know. It's been an open question whether or not we should have it. So
Oliver, I believe, is former. I think Oliver is still a German person officially. But yeah, permanent residence permits. Is that what you mean? Maybe.
I think so. I mean, before, so I don't actually know what the things are going to be now, but before Brexit, I think it kind of mattered where you came from in terms of the legal documents you needed. So I think if you came from outside of the EEA, then you needed a visa, and if you came from the EU, you didn't need a visa, and you didn't really need any sort of documents because you had automatically had the right to remain here and work. But now it's a bit. It wasn't too bad actually. So it was you had to download an app and then scan your passport and then fill out all your addresses for 5 years. That was a bit hard actually because I moved quite a lot. And then if you've been working here, then okay. So I think maybe then the UK one is not too bad. If the German one is 3,000K. Wow.
Giving up USA citizenship costs over 300,000. Wow. Expletive.
But that's the thing, though, because I think if you're Hungarian, you don't have to give up your Hungarian citizenship. So,
yeah, the US people, it's like, no, you can't be anything else, and also American. And oh wait, 3,000. Okay. Phew. I was thinking like 300,000. Like that's like holding people hostage.
Yeah, but 3,000 is still a lot of money. For something like this, unless you really need.
I mean, yeah, a lot of people wouldn't have 3,000 necessarily. I mean, 3,000, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it wasn't too complicated, and if you've been working here, so I've been mainly studying actually, because I started my undergrad quite late. I was 24 when I started it. So the past 5 years, I could easily kind of reference because I just send them all my degrees. Like here is my BA, here is my master's, and I'm doing a PhD here, and here's a letter, which is really easy. But my family members who've been working here for years and years, they didn't even need that because the national insurance number you have, they just write it in and then they just check your history and that's it. So they all they needed their passport and their national insurance number. So it wasn't too bad in the end.
But it seems like, I, for the record, have dual nationality officially, although I haven't had a valid Iranian passport for quite a while now. Because what's the point? You know what I mean? That's probably no point in getting more into that. But yeah, Germany is not a place that allows multiple nationalities. You can so it sounds like it's. Does USA allow multiple nationalities? I don't know. But certainly it sounds like Germany is causing a wee bit of an issue for Xates.
Yeah, it is tricky, to be fair. So having an English passport sounds like a good thing to do. Like I would feel good to have one. But also Hungary, at least for the moment, is still in the EU. So I have an EU passport. So that's also handy in certain situations.
Yeah, I think you want both, surely.
I would want both. I want everything.
I mean, I was saying to someone, oh, maybe we can just marry so that I will have an EU passport.
Yeah.
But...
yeah, that's... I don't actually know how that works. I mean, we've been joking about that, like, let's get married. But it's not really great for us because we're both Hungarian, so there's no gain in terms of a new passport.
You should be able to keep a British and German national at the same time. That's what I've been thinking about, except that it's so expensive. And Xates says, I don't like the USA or ever want to live there, but I am not willing to give up the passport.
It's fair. Completely fair.
So it sounds like, do you consider yourself to be a citizen of any particular country?
No. I think because I left Romania at the age of 3, and even there, you know, my parents are Hungarians. All my family, they are all Hungarians. I never felt particularly strong about any country, and I don't have any national pride whatsoever, which I know some people in Hungary maybe would kind of feel like, oh, you're not really a true Hungarian, but I don't really care. So I just feel like wherever I go, I just want to be myself, and then I don't really care where you are from either. I think the more the yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just wish my parents gave me a name that was a bit more easily pronounceable in English. But I think that's not a thing you think about, especially not in the 80s, 90s. So yeah, I mean, of course, I like.
Okay,
Oh,
I found this on
sorry,
the web.
that was my phone. Like, I'm gonna put the airplane mode on because Siri gets activated. Sorry. So yes. Well, what was I saying?
You were talking about your name and how in the 80s and 90s, maybe people wouldn't have thought about making it more
Yes.
easy to pronounce.
Yeah. So of course, I don't mind it. I like my name now. But yeah, I don't feel particularly strongly about any country. I think if there is a major sports thing like the Olympics, then I cheer for Hungarians. I cheer for the Brits, Scottish. Like I cheer for everyone who I kind of got in contact with. I cheer for Sweden. I've been only there for like a year, but still, I think I really liked living there. So especially when I watch something like skiing, I always kind of cheer for Swedish or Norwegian, even though I've never been to Norway. I'm not sure why. But then again, I'm not particularly picky. So if someone is really good, then how do you pronounce that?
It's like a KS, Ksate.
Ksate. That is a cool name, though. I quite like it.
I mean, you can always, if you don't like a name, you can always change it. You can always call yourself. I mean, but at the same time,
Yeah.
like you kind of want. I myself, I don't want to say you because then I'm generalizing, but I kind of want to honor my parents, honor my heritage, and you've got compliments for how you say it, by the way.
Thank you. We do have we have that letter in Hungarian. That's why, and we start words with it sometimes. Yeah, I had, I think it was my late teens when I was still kind of training to become a marimba artist, like a solo performer, percussionist. And I used to call myself Abigail Wolf because my parents actually wanted to name me Abigail, but there was a Hungarian ballad where a person named Abigail sort of killed her fiance or something like that, but actually it wasn't her fault because the guy was like, do you love me? And then she's like, no. Like, it's like, don't ask me to say that. And the guy killed himself and they blamed it on the girl. And then my grandmother, it's
that's hardly fair.
I know, it's like a poem. It's a really famous Hungarian piece of literature. And then my grandmother was like, no, you cannot name her Abigail because it's like, it's a bad omen. And then when I was a teen, I was a little bit rebellious. I was like, no, I'm going to call myself Abigail because I think she was kind of cool. And then Wolf, of course, is just the English version of my real name, which is Farkas. But then I think in my early 20s, I was like, well, this is what my name is. I'm just going to roll with it. And I stopped using like artist names or anything, just using my real name.
Yeah, there's definitely something empowering about, you know, whatever it is, whether it's something that you decide for yourself or whether it's accepting the thing that was given for you. Once you've decided this is what I'm going to go with, there's definitely something empowering about that. I really appreciate the fact that, yeah, when I think it's interesting how little things really change you. Like, again, you know, the fact that, yeah, Sugarmate asked me, what do you want to have on the name or the credits? And at first I was thinking, oh, should I put Bez? Should I put Behru Shahriari? And then I thought, well, I'll ask them to put both. I don't know if that will be too much. but maybe that's okay. And of course it's not too much, because who cares? What publisher cares about an additional 6 characters? Because I guess there's a quotation marks, then the 3 letters, then the quotation marks, then the space. What publisher would actually care about that once you've already got Behrouz Shahriori, which is already pretty long? But that allows me to kind of honor both my history and also my assumed identity. And that is something that for me is really empowering.
Certainly, yeah. Yeah, I think the only thing that I kind of changed was that in Hungarian you have some different characters in the ABC, so in the alphabet. So my name actually originally is written with like a long E, so it's like an E, like an I, but you kind of have like a long stripe over it, which kind of suggests that you should pronounce it like Timea. And so I write it in a short I in England, and I think I'm more accustomed to it by now. So I think it's like me from 2 words. That's it's still a Hungarian name, but because I kind of spell it with an English letter instead of the Hungarian, I kind of feel like it's more international. It wasn't so much conscious. It's just like, you know, especially like 6 years ago or 10 years ago, when you try to use a foreign character on any document, especially on a computer, it freaked out. Like they couldn't write those letters so much. So I just I stuck with it. But I quite like it now. I like it with the short I.
I'm glad that you've been able to find something that works for you. Let's go back to the start. And obviously music, you said, isn't just a hobby. For you, this is your job, this is your career. Presumably it's also a passion, and it's a driving force in your life.
Yes, I've been studying music for forever, I think now. I started when I was 6. I'm 31 now, so it's about 24 or 5 years now that I've been doing it. My aunt and uncle are opera singers, so that's where it started. I heard my aunt singing on the radio, and then I just told my parents that I want to go to music school. And I was quite fortunate because my parents were always like, okay, well, then you go to music school if you want to. They never actually told me if I shouldn't do this. But my father is an actor, so I think that helps. And my mom, she's a doctor, but she loves the arts. So they were always like, yeah, do art. Sometimes I jokingly blame them. They should have sent me to technical school, and maybe I could be a programmer and earn more money. But not for real, because they always kind of just told me to be myself, which is nice. I think it really helps whenever you want to do something that you know that you've been supported. So now I think it's easier for me to jump into things just because of that. So yes, I've studied music. I went to a music specialist school, which had like music lessons 5 days a week. And I started with percussion. So it was drums at first, but early on you start on the more melodic percussion instruments. So I think from the start I always wanted to just play the marimba. I didn't
like
really...
xylophone, marimba, which you mentioned,
vibraphone as well. Glockenspiel I played in an orchestra, like 2 notes. But yeah, I think I always had a favorite. It was always the marimba. I didn't really like drums. I felt like my sense of rhythm, funnily enough, I've been mocked about this, but I always been more kind of carried away, and I like the artistic freedom that you can do in melodic instruments. But on like a drum, you really need to be more precise, and they're usually the core of music. So I felt like that wasn't so much for me. I was too fluid for that. And then it wasn't customary to play only the marimba. So in Hungary, if you were doing percussion, you had to do all of them.
Wow.
So that was hard for me for a long while, because I think that was also around the time when the internet was more like getting more popular, and then you had all this information suddenly about other countries where you could just be a marimba artist and you didn't need to play all the other percussion instruments. So I think I was 15 when I first knew that I need to leave the country and I need to go somewhere where they let you just play the marimba. So that's how it started. I went to Austria, actually. I went to Salzburg, and I think Graz as well. and I tried a few music universities, but it was always like 60 or 100 people for one place, and then you had to play a full recital, and I didn't get in. And at the time, I felt like it's because I'm just rubbish, so I shouldn't even do it. But then now, of course, I'm 31, and of course, there is one place, and usually there was a person who's been going to that professor for a long time, and it's not even, I don't even blame them for picking someone they knew. Of course they had to pick someone they knew because they knew that that person was good on a long term, you know. So it's like, I'm teaching this person, I know how they are improving, how they're progressing, so I can trust them that they are going to be a good candidate. It's not so much, they were all talented, all 60 of them or 100 of them, but so in that case they need this security that the person they accept to these prestigious music institutions was someone reliable as well. So I got over that, but I had a brief break from music when I didn't get into the prestigious music academies of Europe, and that's where I learned coffee. So that's where I went to barista school and started working with coffee, and that went on for a couple of years. That's how I got to Asia as well. So I was working with coffee at the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Vietnam earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Where else is that? Where have you spent a substantial amount of time anywhere else?
Yeah, so it's I used to date someone at the time, so that's why we went to Vietnam, because that person started working with, I think, rice export, something weird, and I was like, okay, let's see if I can do something with coffee. And we went to Cambodia at first. We've been there for about 5 months, and then Vietnam and Singapore. And I actually found that Singapore had a really vibrant coffee scene, Vietnam as well. So I worked in coffee shops. I was teaching barista training to locals, and they were amazing. They learned it so fast. It's so much faster than I did. And then I think the highlight of my coffee career was judging the Singapore National Barista Championship.
Wow, I didn't. I mean, of course, there's a barista championship, but I had not even considered such a thing. So, like, your Twitter name, Zen Barista, of course, like, this is a big part of your identity, I guess. Zen, because you consider yourself to be in touch with your inner emotions, and
I strive to be more like.
But what is a barista championship? How does that even work? Is it basically making coffee? Everyone brings in their own equipment, and then the judge tastes the coffee and says, "Oh, you made the best coffee. You win the championship."
No, it's really rigorous, actually. And you know what? It's a really big thing in the UK. There are several world barista champions coming from the UK. It's a 15-minute competition where you have to use the coffee machine that's there. So you cannot bring your own. You can bring your own grinder, but you cannot bring your own espresso machine. It has to be the same one for everybody. And in 15 minutes, you have to make 4 espressos, it used to be cappuccinos, but any sort of milk course, and 4 signature drinks. So it's timed. There are 4 or 5 sensory judges, and then there are technical judges who watch every step you do, how much coffee you spill, like, you know, when you grind your coffee, how much ground coffee you have around your workstation. They check how many grams of liquid you have in each cup, so they are all the same. No, there is a competition called Coffee Masters where you make your own blend. That's more like a guerrilla underground competition. It's really cool. I think it's even harder than the official one. But the thing is, you also have to give a presentation. So it's not just like you're there silently making drinks and then serving people. It's like you have to tell a story about where the coffee comes from, how you made a new thing. So like you work with the farm where they have a new process for the beans. So you have to be a showman whilst you're making all the drinks in 15 minutes, and you get quite a big penalty if you go over your time. And for judges, it's actually, you have to have an exam, so you cannot just go there and judge. It's like you have to sit through exams, and
for sure.
There are categories to which it's like how thick the foam is on the cappuccino, things like that you have to kind of check for. So it's a really hard competition, but it's like the biggest thing. So if you're a barista and you're a barista for being a barista, not just a barista because you need a summer job, or which nothing wrong with that, but if it's your life's passion, I think being a barista champion, even a regional champion, is an amazing achievement, and a lot of people strive for that. So it's a really competitive field, I would say. There is coffee roasting competition as well, coffee tasting, when you have to identify, I think you have to select the one from 8 coffees based on the characteristics they give you. It's like you pick up 8 cups and then you say, this one is from Kenya, this one is from... It's tough. It's really high energy, but also really tough. A lot of prep and money goes into it for the competitors.
Yeah, I guess like trying to... Because people do really care about coffee. I mean, some people. So yeah, it makes sense. And I know that obviously there's the World Championships for pole sports championships. And that's super serious. And the people who judge that, it's judged very similarly to ice skating, where there's certain points for this and points for that and points for the other. I mean, I wonder if there would be... I know that there's prizes for... there are prizes for games. Obviously, the Spiel des Jahres, the Golden Geek, the UK Games Expo, lots of conventions have their own awards. But I wonder if... I mean, I feel like I'm bragging now, but I won an award for the best Scottish person in board games for 2020, which I was very excited and very amazingly honored to win. And then they cited, some of my games, but also the fact that I'm streaming so much. But obviously that it's kind of a thing run by students, basically to try and raise the profile of these things. But what would it look like if we did have something for, okay, the top designers, like for the Oscar, or like, okay, here's the top designer, here's the top rules writer, here's the top developer, here's the top artist, here's the top graphic designer, here's the top all of these people. And
I think that would be great. Also, I think, I mean, it depends if you would want it more like to be the Oscars, where you are judged on your previous games and achievements, or maybe it would be more like the coffee competitions, where maybe everyone, I don't know, I think it would be like a game jam, but more like like the competition, but maybe not just the theme would be given, but all the components you have to, or you have to use this specific mechanic with this theme, with these components, and then what you do with that would be more similar to the coffee competitions, I think, in terms of using similar equipment for everyone. I don't know. That could be fun.
That would definitely be interesting, but
also
it feels like there's a difference between coffee making and game making. In that coffee making, and I do want to just do a quick hello to Runa. It's lovely to have you. And this is so sweet of Kate to say. I'm the best Scottish everything. That is completely untrue. There are many things that I'm just not very good at. For example, the best Scottish cook would not be me. The best Scottish singer is definitely not me. I cannot play the bagpipes. But Sate wants to mention Seize the Bean. Obviously, being biased, having that connection for... sorry, laughing at this. Will Cook sucking up, says Runa. But, yeah... Oh man, there are 3 categories. Bez doesn't win, so Jessica says, "Oh, look, I'm not going to start listing all the there. I'm sure I could fill 2 hours just listing things that I would not win." But I mean, what I was getting at was that Alex was excited by the notion of a game jam, and sure, there is a lot of value in being able to make a game quite consistently, but at the same time, game design, it doesn't feel like something you necessarily are going to reproduce over and over. It feels like something where maybe it's also something that will take you a much longer time to do. I would say that if you just judge someone in how good they are as a designer over the course of even one single day, that's not really fair.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
Sure, there are game jams, which Scott mentions. We have to design a historical board game in 72 hours using specific components for judges selected the winning team based on the submitted module rules and video. And yes, there's all sorts of game jams, but that skill is slightly different to being a barista, because being a barista, you have to reproduce it. You're consistently making the same tea every single time. Sorry, not tea, coffee.
You make tea sometimes as well.
Okay, well, you want to make, if there's this drink and you have this kind of latte, it's like, that's the best latte, you want to make that again.
Yeah,
whereas let's say I've made, like, I'm best known for yogi, right? And if I made yogi again, well, what does that mean? That's like me writing down the exact same cards. No one's going to give me any credit for doing that again. I guess what I'm saying is that you want to have more variance. And I'm not saying there isn't some degree of creativity in being a barista, but it feels like the technical accomplishment is really what you're striving for. Whereas being a board game designer, it's more about that creativity and that variation in what you create.
Yeah, you are completely right. I think the key here is reproducing the same thing. And even though for the coffee competition you usually want to find a winning recipe, but then once you found it, once that part ended, your creative sessions of finding the recipe, then all you want to do is reproduce it as best as you can, so that it's always to the same standards. Whilst with games, I think it would be soul crushing if you had to sort of try to create something really similar or so restricted. So maybe the Oscars would be actually better. Like, I don't know. Maybe more categories would be cool, right? So I think Ross from More Games Please has Best Art of the Year. That's one of my highlights, because I really enjoy that. And I don't know. There's so many things you can judge a board game on. I don't know. I think I always enjoy Best Foreign Film in the Oscars. So I would be interested in just seeing board games from other countries that we don't necessarily hear about that much, and then trying to bring those to light. So it would be cool to have like a lot of different categories for board games, other than just it's not just best board game. Of course, I know there is expert board game and kids board games and festival awards, but
sure. There's like even the Golden Geek, which is like the most diverse sets of awards out there, I believe. And UK Games Expo has what's the RPG accessory, what's RPG things, and sure, getting into expansions and these things, but it's still about the product. It's sure, Golden Geek, then it goes into podcasts and shows and stuff, but it's really about the product. It's never, hey, let's really look at these things from an industry perspective. And it's always difficult to merit these things. But if we say, okay, Ross is already doing it for art, you're 100% right. And I love that. But maybe we should have an award for the best written rule book in board games. What was the best written rule book in 2020? Definitely. I have no bleeping idea.
I completely agree with you. And then rules are such an essential part of board games. And a good rulebook can just really make or break your experience. So I think we've been talking about Taverns of Thief and Ta before. And the rulebook of that, whilst the actual rules explanations are fine, but the order in which things appear is weird. So there is a deck of guests that you have to actually separate, but it only tells you to separate a certain type of guest once you actually start reading the rules for the modules. So I haven't read the rules for the modules because I thought, okay, well, I'm just gonna play, the first one, the base one. And we left in 10 guests that you should have taken out, but it says it nowhere until you reach module 3. That now you should put in those 10 guests, but it doesn't tell you to take them out. So for a while we were wondering, okay, well, this card looks weird. There are things on it that are not relevant in this game. So I was wondering if we should have taken them out. And then you look through the base rules and it's not there. So it's really important, and little things make a massive difference in a good rule book.
100%. And, board games are reaching the point for sure where we can nail down little parts of them. And I just want to acknowledge some of the chat. Very quickly, what is your opinion of latte art?
I love it. I judged the latte art competition as well. I'm actually notoriously not great at it. So when I used to be working, I was quite consistent at pouring hearts and rosettas and tulips. And now that I have my own espresso machine, I am getting better at it again. But I think the quality of your milk foam is more important, because that's what gives you the type of mouthfeel that you get when you sip into your drink. But if you work in a coffee shop, third wave coffee shop, I think a heart at least is essential, because it just brings a bit more joy to people. So if I go to a coffee shop and I know it's a great coffee shop and they have great coffee, beans, sourced from great places, and my coffee doesn't have art because the barista is new, or just has a day where, some days you cannot do it. It's really weird. There are just days you cannot. I'm not going to judge them based on that if, the drink itself is great. But as a person, behind the bar, I felt like it's great when you can produce a heart at least, because then when you give it to a guest, they kind of light up, and that's a great feeling. So it doesn't change the quality of the drink, in my opinion, but I think it gives that extra care to the service, where guests are just a bit happier when they get something nice.
100%. These little details do matter, whether it's the art on a latte or the back of a board game box, or indeed like the sides that you only see once you've opened it up. And sometimes those sides, okay, it's adverts for other games, that's fine, I'm not going to complain. Sometimes it's just plain white, well, I'm not going to complain. But sometimes, once in a while, there's something pretty there. Like I've seen a game where it's a skyline on the inside of the box, or I've seen a game where it you've got paper covering that anyway. Why not do something with it? And
yeah, I'm definitely art first with board games and theme. So it's what makes me interested in a game usually, when I see the art and I hear the theme. Of course, the game has to be good for it to stay in my collection, or for me to actually want to play it more than once. But I do think, for some people at least, it matters what you see on a box, even sometimes. I don't know. I think it's not for everyone. I know that some people really don't care about art, and when we've done the immersion research study, there were definitely players who said, whatever art you put on this, it's not going to make it better for me. I just care about the gameplay. And I think it's completely valid. But then there are people who are more interested in the art at first. And if you can lure them in with good art and in an interesting theme, but then they will stay for your gameplay, I think it's a win for everyone in that situation.
Just acknowledging Gruna to say thank you very much for lurking, and I hope that you enjoy your time pampering yourself. And Alex, just to clarify, when I said remaking Yogi, I meant literally just rewriting the exact same cards. I mean, sure, if I make another hit game like it, if I make the more games that I sell that are able to pass 6 digits, sure, that's going to make me more income, and that would be great. And parts of me, that's what I was actually starting to do last year. But each of those games needs to be fundamentally different, because people aren't just going to buy literally the same game. That's what I was driving at. Whereas if it's literally exactly down to every atom, let's say, okay, the atoms are going to be different from a scientific model, the atoms have been absorbed, but if the chemical components of that drink were exactly the same, you would drink that same drink over and over, and it's because it's a thing that you consume. And I think that's the key difference. It's because it's a thing that you consume. it's the same with like flying or service stuff. Like when it's a service, you want to do it. This is the pinnacle. This is how good we can do it, and we want to do it at this level. But when you're creating something that is then permanent, because of that permanence, well, we don't need exactly the same thing because we've already got it. And I think that's the key difference.
Yeah, that is true.
I really enjoy that fact. I would love to hear more about it another time. Runa says, this sounds like an intense discussion. But I mean, this is the thing that's like, yeah, it's like exploring these things in detail, and that's where the interesting bits come out. And you were talking about immersion. Let me sort of arts, immersion, and do you follow game tech at all? Ludology, Jeff Engelstein?
Yes.
So there was that study where they had oh, what's that game? Someone help me, unless you know it, Timea. The game where you go through and you're grabbing gems. It's got multiple names. Oh, stop! It's not Teotihuacan. Come on, it's the game where you go into the... Anyway, so Ink and Gold, that's exactly it. Ink and Gold. Thank you so much, Matthew, to the rescue. So, yeah, Jeff Engelstein hypothesized that maybe if you told people, instead of being an adventurer going into the cave and getting some gold, maybe you are someone who's going in and saving people. Would people play differently because of the immersion? And then the truth is that after the study, people did play differently to start off with, but after 3 or 4 games, everyone basically ended up playing exactly the same as they would have before. And for me, that's the interesting bit.
Immersion is a really tricky thing, actually. So I didn't start out my PhD studying immersion, and I still don't consider it to be the main focus of my PhD. But it was a really interesting thing where we wanted a metric on which we could measure whether or not music that corresponds to your gameplay would make a change in player experience. So we were like, okay, let's look at the literature, let's look at studies and see what player experience elements or measures or metrics there are and which ones we could use and how. And I think the great thing about board games is also a not so great thing is that there's not so much research. There's a little bit, there's, for example, Melissa Rogerson jumps into my mind. She's publishing papers like a hero. I love her work. It's amazing. And there are, of course, others. It's not her alone. But it's compared to other mediums or media like video games, you have a lot less papers. So that's when you want to write a literature review or you want to refer to someone, it's not good because you're like, okay, well, I cannot find a paper that does this. On the other hand, you can be like, okay, I'm going to do the study and then publish it myself. So it's, two edges to the same thing. So that's what we did. We were like, okay, well, we want to use immersion, but all the immersion studies are around video games or books even, but not board games. Nobody cares whether or not board games could be immersive so far. But then you go to buy a board game, and sometimes it is actually marketed as an immersive game. So what do they mean? What is immersion in board games? Is it the same as video games? Is it completely different? Is it even a thing? So we started with actually just reading all the really important papers published in video game immersion. And what we found was that people kind of go to great lengths to argue what it is. So there are so many different definitions. It's one of those things that has a couple of different definitions, and then you find papers where they are like arguing each other which one is the right one. And so it's already sort of problematic because when you talk about immersion, you have to kind of refer to which one you are talking about. The one where they say it's more like submerging yourself into the game world, or some definitions of immersion say that it's when you are so concentrated on the game that you kind of lose track of time. And then there are other concepts like flow. If you've probably heard about flow as well.
Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who did a lot of work on that.
Also Hungarian. But basically, sometimes in some studies you would see that flow and immersion are used interchangeably, and then in other studies they're completely different. So we went into this reading a lot about immersion and kind of coming to the conclusion that it's already a bit of a mess because it has so many different definitions. And so
yeah, you're right. It is a problematic word in that sense. If you want to actually use it in a technical setting, I think this is the kind of work that, you know, building blocks of game design, where it's let's decide what words mean, and if something means three different things, you know, if we've got, I like the word orthogame because, you know, that's okay, now we can be specific. We are talking about this type of thing. And that's why definitions matter.
Yes.
Why we need to be like, okay, what are we getting at? But I know Shem Phillips, when we were talking, Shem Phillips was talking about how, for Shem, it's not about, when people talk about, is this game thematic? People sometimes talk about immersion, which is you feel like you're doing the thing that your character is doing. And sometimes it's about, okay, you've got a lot of setting where you've got a universe around you and you're able to get into the story. Now, this setting itself, for Shem, that's what matters. And that's portrayed in the games. But this setting can definitely lead to immersion. And immersion isn't just what you feel in the moments necessarily. It's also what you feel after the game, like maybe even months later or even years later, when you think back to that moment. How do you remember it? Do you remember as, oh, I was going through in this very mathematical way to get one step ahead of a person? Or are you thinking, okay, I managed to turn the corner and I managed to cut them off from the inside? And in this race game where Ave Caesar, for example, great game.
Yeah, that's completely true. And I think when we first started thinking about immersion, we used a research method called grounded theory, where we just collected a lot of forum discussions already talking about immersion. So it's like you go through hundreds and hundreds of comments, and then you start building your theories. And the first thing we've realized was that a lot of people are, whenever someone asks them what the most immersive game was, they don't so much talk about a game, they talk about an experience and what that made them feel like. And so we've done a few runs of this rigorous kind of theory building based on the forum comments. And then once we had some theories, we started interviewing people and asking them, you know, those questions you cannot really extract from just reading the comments. So this was a project that lasted more than a year by the time we published the paper. But I think the key things that we found were actually quite surprising, because I sort of went into this trying to find a definition of what board game immersion is. And instead, I found that there is no definition, but yet we cannot just say that, let's get rid of this word because it's too messy and use something else. But instead we found this is something really important to players, but they all have their own definitions. And if they have a definition, that will kind of determine what they will experience. So we find it's more like a spectrum. So there are, on one end, there would be players who only care about gameplay. So you could call this engagement as well, not just immersion. They would be similar. And they could be immersed in chess. They could be immersed in Go. They don't need a theme at all. But this is immersion for them because this is what they're defined as immersion. So for example, if you played a game of chess and your definition of immersion would be to get into a game world, then you would not get immersed, but the other person you're playing with would, because their definition is that they need a really challenging gameplay. So I think for me, this was the most fascinating thing of how players, most of them would have an idea of what immersion was. So if I asked you what immersion is, you would have an idea, you would have a definition of your own. And if you sat down to play a game, the experience would only be immersive if it matched your idea of what immersion was. So this was the first thing that we found, that it's more like a spectrum, and players have a predefined idea of what it is, and the experience has to match this idea for them to be immersed. And then the second thing was that, you know, we often talk about games being immersive, but it's actually game and player together that makes something immersive. And the way board games are so unique compared to maybe other games like video games is that a lot of the times you have a game, but what makes you immersed is what you add to the game. So players would say, we get immersed because we always role play this game. So it is immersive because of our role playing. It's not required. The game doesn't tell me to role play, but I do it because that is how I get immersed. Or other players would put on some background music or dress up or change the lights or house rule the games even. And they say this gets immersive because we play with our own rules and this is how we get immersed. So it's that two different things. Like sometimes you need the game to have certain elements in order to immerse, and then sometimes you need to add certain things to the games to get immersed. So that's why I think board games are really fascinating in terms of immersion. And I think if we start thinking about immersion more like a generic term,
I wanted to also, I know this is almost like annoying, and I want to check with you how long you have, because obviously this is just about meeting, and given what you've just said, it would be lovely to have you on in a few weeks to explore both this and your other topic. But I would like to get a chance to go into the main thing, which is how I got to know you, where you had this beautiful video, and I was actually going to play it. Maybe we can play it next time at the start of it. So obviously I could just ask you, I think technically I have to check, hey Timea, is it okay for me to show your video as part of this? Because although having said that, I would probably do some sort of critical analysis anyway, but this video, which seems to show a series of typical board game actions, things moving around, cards being shuffled, and then I'm not sure what went on there. I'm not sure what I was looking at. It seems like you filmed some disparate board game things and then composed some music to this score. What's actually happened there?
Right. So that video was actually made for our internal PhD conference, where every year we have to give a 1-minute talk, like a buzz talk about our research. Wow. So every year you do this, and this was my third time doing this. So this is my third year. We have a 4-year program, and we were in lockdown. So this year the conference was online, and they said, well, you can get as creative with the video as you want to. You don't have to talk for a minute as you normally would. So I thought, okay, well, I was talking about this twice already, and I always do these TED talks, kind of, this is a board game kind of talks. I was like, okay, let's do something different, because now I could actually make a B-roll style video. I could make things move because it's going to be online. So I just wanted to imitate with how the board game was shot, how it would kind of feel if you had something happening in the game and then you had music exactly timed to that. So it's more like a conceptual idea than an actual thing. And a lot of research with a lot of things with research are more conceptual, where you basically test if this would work in the real world. Sometimes you imitate game systems, sometimes you imitate music systems to participants, and then you kind of make them believe this is how it would work if it was maybe an AI doing it or a software. So I think that's quite fascinating, that you get to try things that you may not have the time to actually build, like a commercial product. Of course, you don't do that in a PhD. Like when I started my PhD, I thought it's going to be me in a lab building crazy things, but actually it's a lot of background research of finding out what makes people or players tick, and whether or not it would make any difference to their playing if we had done this or that. But that conceptual testing is something unique to PhDs or academia, where you can try things that you could maybe not in a commercial setting, because you don't have time to figure that out. You have to kind of have a product instead. So yes, it's just an illustration of how I imagine it would feel like for you to play maybe Pandemic, where the music kind of came in the same time, where you draw an epidemic card and things like that.
Yeah, I was talking. You might Matthew Dunstan mentions Quartza, which is a game app co-designed by Brett Gilbert, featuring a generative soundtrack that reacts to the actions that the players take in a game.
Oh, that's amazing! I'm going to write that down. Quarta. So how does it work? I wonder if Matt knows. Is it computer vision, or does it listen to you, or what does it do?
I do not know, but presumably this is something that we would either need to chat to Matthew. I've not really chatted much to Brett since sort of lockdown. I hope Brett's okay.
That sounds really cool. Still,
have you chatted much to Brett, Matthew? Say hi to me from me if you see Brett. But anyway, Matthew says it's a tile laying game where you make connections, and the connections you make create different aspects of the soundtrack.
Oh, right, I see. So it's a game. Oh, hey,
hello, Ross.
Hey, Ross. So it's an actual game with built-in interactive music. That's really cool. And that's one of the things we've been thinking about. Of what would that's really cool.
And
I'm going to check this out.
This reminds me of so many video games like Chime. I don't know if you ever played Chime. And so, yeah. So I had this video with Amadeus. I can't remember what number it was. It was maybe 3 months ago, sort of thing. But Amadeus and I were talking about what board game music could be like. You know, talking about, background music to a board game that's just a CD. And what would it be like to have music, as you're saying, that reacts to what you're doing? And ultimately, the kind of key thing that keeps occurring to me is, in order for it to react to what's happening, either you need to have one person who's a game master who's like doing all this stuff, or it needs to be very much electronic. And both of these things kind of take away partially. I feel like the game master approach is actually nicer, because ultimately board games are all about that shared experience.
Yeah.
And so having someone who's maybe even... It reminds me of Adventures in Artists. Shouts out to Jason Hodgson, who I believe is the only person doing live instrumental music to Dungeons and Dragons. So people play Dungeons and Dragons on that stage, whilst other people improvise music. There's like a 3-piece orchestra behind all the spectators. And it's so interesting being able to... boom, there's some wind howling, and then you hear that on the violin, and then someone says, okay, there's the giant footsteps, and then you hear that on the bass. But it's also about the atmosphere.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, especially because I think the whole reason why I started researching the idea of music in board games is, first of all, because if you've been doing music for so long, you always look for new things to implement it into, because you feel like, I just need a challenge. I want to mix it into something where it's not necessarily as usually there. But then you realize that there's a good reason for that, because whenever we try to play with music that is not for the board game itself, especially when it's an action type board game where you get all sorts of things, you draw a card and there is an event, it gets really distracting, because games can get really hectic, and then you are trying to strategize or have a tactical decision, and then trying to shout together, and then the music is kind of distracting in that case. So that's one thing that I think is kind of a block to successful music in board games. And then the second thing I think is that there is already kind of a mixed feeling towards apps in board games. So I think when we are researching this as a conceptual thing, we've been thinking about either building this into a game that doesn't exist. So you build the game around it and you hide the electronics in a way that's not there. Or if you want to make it for existing board games, like a system that could accommodate different compositions by different, you had, I don't know, Pandemic, we already talked about. So somebody composes music to Pandemic, and then your system can time it, or composes music to Time Stories, whatever. in that case, it has to be something that's in the background and it's not in your face. So it's not an app you have to click. It has to be automatic and it has to be autonomous and outside of your view, which is really tricky to do. But I think the great thing about the PhD is that you can imitate this without actually building the system fully, and checking if that would make a difference to players. Would they hate it? Would they love it? Would they still feel it's intrusive or not? So that's the bulk of our work. But if we wanted to build something, I think if anyone else here is a programmer and wants to collaborate, then definitely up for it. So far, it's more a conceptual testing that we are doing.
Ooh, and I'll read this out. Oh, Timea, can I actually ask, I should have asked this earlier on, if you can move your camera so that the top of your head is closer to the top of the screen, just so that people can see your mouth. Sometimes helps.
More like this. Oh, yeah, more like this.
Yeah, exactly. So Matthew says, also, it might be interesting that Matthew has a game coming out next year that uses an app to scan cards and then play a soundtrack which represents the setting and actions occurring around the object that that card depicts.
Yes.
This is really interesting.
100% would be interesting.
And it reminds me of Black and White, which the video game by Peter Molyneux. I say by Peter Molyneux, but it was just, you know, Peter is just one of a whole bunch of people working on it. But anyway, what happened here was that there were little soundtracks, instrumental soundtracks, and one would fade out and one would fade in as some sort of action happened. And they were designed so that there wouldn't be any harsh clashes.
No.
And I think there's a lot of really nice stuff there. And Matt confirms it is a narrative deductive game in case anyone had any doubt.
I love that. I want to try that. I love those. Yes, I completely agree. And I think the thing with doing anything a little bit new is not so much about me inventing something that I sell and then I become a millionaire, because that's not going to happen. But more like, this is a field that I think has a lot of room for others to come in and then move it forward. Because if you look at video game music 20 or 30 or 40 years ago, it evolved so much that now it's a full cinematic score with real orchestras, and it has so much music now, and some of it is completely reactive, some of it is made in a way that you feel like it's reactive. So that is also a thing. It's sometimes you do something in a video game and then it feels like the music reacts, but it's not necessarily reacting to your specific action, but it kind of makes you believe it does. So these things I think are amazing. And I feel like with board games, it needs a good couple of years before maybe, if other people are also interested in it, composers or programmers, more importantly, because I think it's a technical thing. But if people come together and start getting interested in board game music and start thinking, okay, well, board games have more stories now. Board games have more sort of video game or movie-like elements. Maybe we could try and make the sensory elements similar without taking away from what makes a board game a board game. So it's not, the goal is not to replicate a video game, because then you go and play a video game instead, but maybe to widen the horizons of what would maybe elevate the immersive experience for some players, or maybe would be an interesting thing for composers to get into as a new field of making music. Yes.
It seems like a weird thing because, there's so much that I want to say on this topic, and there are reasons why it is problematic in that, maybe people don't want the tech in their games, but also like Vince Vergonjon said when they were coming on, there's a limit on how much space you have on these apps, and there's a limit on how much money you have.
Yes.
I mean, even Chronicles of Crime hasn't sold all that well when you compare it to a AAA video game title.
Yeah, I think...
Sorry, just that there's a very, very few games that sell into millions. And unless selling into millions is something that you can reliably expect of a game that would genuinely benefit from having music on it, it doesn't really merit the budget quite often.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think That is why, for us, testing the concept before you spend millions or something that's not going to sell is a great thing to do, and what research is great at, because you can, as I said, imitate a system without having built it. But my idea from the get-go was that you would need a system that kind of works on its own. So something that you can have in your browser. So you don't actually necessarily need something new to be built for every game, but you could have a system and then you just add your own music to it. And then, so my supervisor, one of them, is a machine learning expert. So that was one of the things that we've been thinking about using, where you can feed a machine. Yes, exactly. So those are the things we've been looking into, and you can have a system that can work on its own, and then you feed it with examples, and then it kind of generates the music for you. But even with that, I definitely believe that not all board games would need music necessarily, and it wouldn't have to be something that you need to use all the time. So I always thought they should be optional. Maybe if someone wants it, then it could be there for them. But you are completely right. So I don't think this should be something that should take away your budget, because the game has to be the main focus anyway. So it's more like an extra that if it worked and if it added anything beneficial to the players, then I think it would be a great new area to explore in the future, rather than thinking about it commercially at this point.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say about not every game would benefit from music.
Interactive music, I'm saying. So I think, because depending on what type of game you're playing, there are some games, like Azul, I can play it with any music. Like when you're playing like this, I could play Azul with that music that you're playing right now.
But then, would you want to play Azul with heavy metal?
No. I don't think I would want to play anything with heavy metal so much. But maybe someone would. So I think
maybe like a party game. Maybe like a shouty party game.
Yes. So I think it's interesting. I used to have a conceptual idea for this during my master's, where I was thinking about games where I'm thinking more about Euro games, maybe. So if you play Ticket to Ride and you put any sort of non-intrusive music under it, then it should be fine. But then once you start playing more thematic games, at least for me personally, whenever I played more thematic games, and the music, even though it was thematically fitting, so I think if I played, I don't know, if I played Aeon Sun, maybe with like a post-apocalyptic soundtrack of a movie.
Yeah, you'd want kind of like some sort of...
Yeah, so we tried doing that. We tried putting some thematic music to that, and then after about 15 minutes, it gets really distracting, because we were in a phase where we were just thinking hard of what to do next turn. Then the music went on because it was written for something else. So I think it's quite interesting, because there are so many different types of board games, and I think they don't all necessarily need interactive music, but I think there are games that would necessarily benefit more from interactivity than others. So it might just be me, though, because that's how when I play a game, that's how I think about hearing the music in my head, thinking, okay, so this is where I think it would benefit from interactive music, whilst other times I feel like anything that kind of fits would go well, or silence. Sometimes I just prefer silence. So optional is key, I think.
Yeah, and how many phone apps do we play that maybe have music, but then we don't always want that music?
Yeah, but then there are like Monument Valley, you always want the music with it.
And people browsing Instagram, but not having the sound turned on. Like, I used to actually watch flash animations in a place where I couldn't listen to the sound, and I know that's quite niche, but I was in a library for whatever reason, the headphones weren't always working.
Yeah.
And so I would watch these flash animations, and if it had subtitles, for me, it's not that I'm deaf. It's just that I could suddenly enjoy the animation and understand what's happening. But of course, when I went home and then I listened to it, if the music has if there's a lot of love put into the music, for sure, then it can add. I feel like I want to wrap up. I'm really appreciating all the time that you're giving, and I guess it kind of wraps up into, it also goes into the new way that I'm treating the stream, which is kind of to be a little bit more loose with the times. And if we go beyond 12, then that's fine. I'm not going to suddenly stop anymore. It's just going to be, if someone wants to talk for an hour, that's fine. If someone wants to talk about 3 hours, that's fine. But we've had a lovely meeting, and I feel like we've really delved into these things, and we could talk so much more about music and board games. We could talk so much more about what is immersion. And I want to ask you, the final question would be like, what are some other things that people might not know about you, so that next time we can get like a little bit more into the topic? And while you're thinking of that, I want to acknowledge a little bit of the chat. So Xate says they're being introduced to lots of designers and their games through this stream, and a few others that had previously been outside of Xate's scope of interest. But knowing the people and the processes behind the games is making those games more interesting to Xate, which is a lovely thing. And thank you, Matthew. And I'm glad that you found it interesting. And again, thank you to Timea for coming on. And I assume that Runa's not listening to this anymore, but if you watch this afterwards, hope it was a good shower, or if we're on loud while you're showering, then I hope that Runa's having a good shower. Hey, Runa. That's kind of a weird... Now, anyway, sorry, I should stop thinking about other people showering. So, Timea, is there anything else that you would like to say about yourself?
Ooh, I think it's a tough one. I don't know. I think it's... I think I already mentioned that I get into things really easily, and that for a short period of time, I do them really seriously, and then I move on. So I used to play poker competitively for a while, just because I got interested in it. And so every time I get into something, I feel like I have to master it real quick. And then once I get a little bit good, I kind of move on. I don't know if it's interesting or not. I think it's a bit weird, for sure. Yeah, I think that's all. We've already talked about coffee and cooking.
So what are some of your other hobbies that people might not have expected?
So I've already mentioned embroidery, which is, I think, the newest thing I'm doing. I tried to learn drawing at once. So that was my hobby for about 3 months at some point. And what else was there? Video production. So I think the result of that was that one video that you saw. Then I sort of hopefully get back into it. I'm hoping. What? Yes, my partner is saying that the Nintendo Switch is definitely a hobby. I don't know if that's true. I think it's more like a relaxation time for me. Dog training until I've got my recent dog.
Do you have pets?
I have a dog. Yes, and I used to be into dog training when I was younger, and I was really confident when we've adopted our dog now. And I was like, yes, I'm gonna handle this. I know how to train a dog, and it's not working. so that there is my confidence about that. Thanks, Ross. Yeah, comfy sweaters. That's also, I love comfy sweaters as well. I think Anna Maria, we've talked about Anna Maria before. I think she said
Anna Maria Jackson Phelps.
She says about herself that she's a jack of all trades, master of none. I feel a little bit like that with my hobbies as well. Like I get really enthusiastic about them, and I kind of feel like a little expert for like a little short time, and then suddenly I get into a new thing. Board games are an exception. It's been going on for 6 years now. So I think that's the longest hobby I've had.
I mean, maybe the thing about board games is that they offer so many diverse experiences. And sure, maybe for a while, you don't play so many heavy Euros. Maybe you move up to 18xx games and heavier stuff because heavy euros aren't heavy enough for you. Or maybe for a while you delve more into massive group party games. Maybe you go towards multiplayer solitaire stuff that you play online for a while, but maybe you can get dexterity games, thoughtful games, games where it's all about your emotional intelligence, where you're trying to make other people laugh or engage with other people. And it just feels like maybe I'm overselling it a little bit, but I feel like because of the interaction, games do have just, that's kind of what I was hinting at. That Xate has been playing lots of roll and writes over Twitch with Loozapalooza. But again, maybe I'm overselling it, but I just feel like board games, there's such a massive variety in the actions. Whereas if I am salsa dancing, for example, sure, the people that I'm salsa dancing with, and I say this as someone who adored salsa dancing, and I kept it up, consistently, multiple times a week. I would go for maybe 5 years or so. I was maybe intermediate, I would say, and then you get to a point where to improve, what I needed to do was to move my head less. This is not something I enjoy. To improve, I need to learn I want to bounce. I want to feel the music. And okay, maybe it's not the right dance for me. Maybe I'm better off swing dancing, which I migrated to. But maybe you go off and then you're like, okay, I go to another place. I went to a place in Paddington, and in Paddington, that was all about Latin dancing. So it wasn't just salsa. It was about merengue. It was about cha-cha-cha. It was about salsa. And you would learn 5 different things. And bachata as well. Bachata, I loved that. All in one night. And so if you had the pass, then you would stay there for maybe 4 hours. So it was once a week. You go there, you spend 4 hours doing all of these dances. And then you maybe have a bit of a social afterwards. And that's more interesting because at least you're doing a variety of dances. But when it's just, okay, I need to master this, that's almost like playing one tiny genre of games.
Yeah, you're completely right. I think you explained really well why I usually jump from hobby to hobby, because when I reach a point where you really need to dedicate most of your time to it, to master it, that's where I tend to quit, because I've already done that with music. I spent like more than 20 years, mastering that. And board games are sort of also my job now, because I research players more often than anything else these days. I'm working on my next study right now. So because of that, I feel like I have those 2 things that I've dedicated most of my time to master elements of. But with board games, I can also switch off the work and just play one, and I don't have to master it, which is great. So I think that's also the reason why it stays, because I have this element of seriousness whenever I do a research study, when I can get technical and think about the terms and everything like that. But then I can just switch it all off and play something and not care about any of it. So really good explanation with the dance. I've never danced. I think only briefly, like for 2 weeks.
Oh, it's one of my favorite things to do, whether it's, I'm not going to say that I want to do salsa all the time, but just dancing, like boogieing and swing dancing, it's one of the things that I miss the most. Or pole dancing, like...
Yeah. I love watching dance and all the arts, but if you saw me dancing, I would look like a polar bear on ice.
And going back, Oliver, and I just want to ask, is it Kinne? Is that how you pronounce Oliver Kinne? Oliver says, I just love the idea of adaptive music for board games. With modern smartphones and augmented reality, maybe there is a way for a phone to see what's happening in the game and play the right music.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's so
keep an
many...
eye on what's happening in this area. Anyway, thank you for such a wonderful interview. Thank you for Timea for your time and your insights.
Thank you, Oliver. And I do agree. I think there are just so many different ways you could track the game state. You could have computer vision, you could use cameras, you could use built-in electronics, triggers. So it's not so much about what you're using, but it's what that if you bring any technology into a board game, you have to be really mindful of why it's there. It really has to have a reason for it in order to work. And it has to serve a purpose that makes a contribution rather than become a gimmick in a way, so that the players don't necessarily feel like, oh, I have this extra thing here that is more bothersome than brings me joy. So that's you have to hit that right balance. And some games do this. One that comes to my mind is Detective, a modern crime board game, because it has a website that for me that's one of the most immersive board games I've played. For me, that is what I consider personally immersive. I'm not saying that's the definition, but my personal definition, because it brings the game outside to my world. So I don't so much have to go in, but it comes out. I'm using my own laptop. There's a website. I feel like I am in my own environment. I'm a detective, and I'm using the real case files with that website together. So it's tech that I feel like has purpose, and it's not intrusive. But there must be other games as well.
And hello, Bones and Banners. Thank you for dropping in. And sorry, I didn't say goodbye to Matthew if you're already there. And Bones and Banners says augmented reality can also be useful to or for sightless players.
And
really
good point.
Yeah, like when we have the AI to see what is happening and then to describe that, whether it's describing that through spoken word to describe it for the people who are struggling with seeing, or whether it's people who are kind of generating music based on it. And Runa never watches back. That's totally fair, but does listen when they're lurking, apparently. And we've got some people want to challenge the question of a polar bear on ice. So wouldn't that be expertly? Because Runa has, But I feel like it's time for us to wind down. It has been such a lovely time. And honestly, this is a kind of moment where I could just be like, you know what, Timea, no, you're never allowed to leave. You need to stay, and we're going to turn this into a 24-hour stream. Surprise! And now we need to just be on the stream for 24 more hours. And I'm going to force you to become my friend.
That would be nice. If someone brought us food, then I would be up for it. Just bring the cakes.
And you need to also stretch your legs. Speaking of which, I'm going to do a Michael, and I'm going to actually get up off my chair and stretch my legs.
Nice.
But it has been lovely meeting you. I feel like we've really gotten to know a wee bit of what you're all about. And as I, doing a Michael and stretching my legs, Oh, and So Crafty So-and-so says they have so enjoyed meeting you virtually, and myself as well. And someone actually might send you a pizza when you say that to me. Be careful.
I'm not against that.
And so Crafty so just to remind you that I do go by she. But anyway, to recap, let me actually go down. Recap. I don't have a song to recap. I feel like I should. Recap. What rhymes with recap? Bap, whap, hap, tap. Recap. Here's my shoulder, and here that's anyway. Let's stop trying to improvise a song for the recap. Thank you very much. There's so many.
Yes, that would be great.
So rehab. No, that's a wee bit different. It's all good. So Crafty. So just be mindful in the future, please. But anyway. We have talked about so much. We talked about traditional Hungarians, like what is a traditional Hungarian. We talked about the yeast Swiss roll, a Swiss roll of yeast in it, basically. We talked about Taverns of Tiefenthal. We talked about cooperative games. We talked a little bit about the crew and Rummy, and games being complicated. We talked about gatekeeping, because you can move on, but you don't necessarily always want to move on. We talked about theatre life. We talked about drinking or not drinking. We talked about clothes and being able to express ourselves via clothes, maybe having multiple colors of clothes so that we can express, hey, yellow is when I want to engage with people, and black, I'm sending the signal that I don't want to engage with people today. We talked about AeroPress and other ways to make coffee. We talked a lot about coffee. I mean, I feel like we did do what we set out to do. When I said to Anna Maria Jackson Phelps, we will do that about for at least 5 minutes. I think we talked about coffee for more than 5 minutes. We talked about composing. We talked about movies and nationalities and changing your nationalities and how America charges you £3,000 to stop being American, because otherwise everyone would want to stop being American, I guess. I mean, it's kind of crazy. They charge you to stop being American. That, like, yeah, what's up with that? Anyway, but we talked about awards. We mentioned Ross earlier on, like when you weren't here, Ross, I don't know if you overheard that, but talk about how we award art. So why don't we award rules? Why don't we award, and yeah, other than Ross, everyone else is just awarding the entire product. Let's get a little bit more into it. Let's get a bit more specific. Let's say this has got the best graphic design. This has got the best box cover art. Even within art, you know, there's more specificity that we could benefit from, possibly, to say, hey, you know what, this person did brilliant work. And sure, it's always a team effort, but if we say this is the best developed game and this is the best design game, like maybe this is the best concept, this is the best like execution, this is the best balancing, and this is the best I don't know, templating on cards. But let's get really into details. Anyway, we talked about art and immersion and the physicality and the permanence of something that you make, the permanence of games, meaning that I can't just make literally the same game again. Whereas the fact that you consume a meal, meaning that if you can make that same meal or coffee again, then good on you. We talked about Melissa Rogers. We talked about Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. We talked about engagement and flow. We talked about your music video and what could be with games and adaptive music. And then we finished off by talking about dancing for some reason. And yeah, is there anything that I missed?
No, we talked about a lot.
Yeah, we did.
Really a lot of topics.
If you want to check me out, I'm StuffWithBez, StuffWithBez.bigcard.com, Twitter.com/StuffWithBez, Instagram.com/StuffWithBez, Twitch.tv/StuffWithBez. I stream every day. I will be streaming at 10 a.m. I'm actually going to be a little bit more flexible, so sometimes I'll start a wee bit early if I really want to. And there you go. But, you know, when it's a discussion topic, we will start basically at 10 a.m. But if it's just a casual meeting or if it's just chaotic shenanigans, I will start whenever I want, because that's one of my New Year's resolutions, to try and be a little bit more flexible with myself, to make it more, because why shouldn't we start 2 minutes early if we're both ready and just witter on for a couple of minutes? Why not? If you want to watch the old episodes, it's youtube.com/StuffWithBez and StuffWithBez.com/Discord. Please check out the Discord. I never actually did the whole Bez and Friends Game Day is happening on January the 9th. And so check that out. There's Alan Paul, Eric Slauson, Rory Muldoon, Alex, and there's going to be a game designed by Xates. I don't know if it's there or not. But yeah, that is everything. And yeah, thank you very much. Oliver has to go now. Thank you so much for a lovely interview. I hope 2021 will be amazing for everyone. Lots of love to you as well, Oliver. Thanks for the stream, Timea and Bez. It was a very interesting stream. And wow, I'll have to watch the VOD. I've been AFK a lot on the phone. It's entirely up to you, So Crafty So-and-so. Like, I put out more content, more videos than I expect anyone to honestly watch 100% of. Speaking of nationalities, a friend of mine recently moved to Thailand. Wow. Who is this friend? Because for a moment, when I saw this, I was like, oh, are you going to say a friend of mine is about to move? But no, because I'm about to move to Thailand this year. And so at some point in 2021, I am going to go to Thailand. So yeah, if they like board games, maybe I could find them and maybe we could get in touch and it would be lovely to have them. Sate says it's because Americans owe US taxes even when living and working abroad, even if they also pay that tax in those countries. Wow. Conversely, I do not pay French tax, and I think I might have to, honestly, 95% of my money is made by Gigamic. That's just the way it currently is for me. And so, in theory, it's enough that I might have to pay tax on it in France, but I had to do this kind of declaration to say I'm paying UK tax because I'm based in the UK, and so they don't charge me tax twice. Thank you so much, so crafty so-and-so. That's lovely to hear. Learning so much from you, Bez. Ross says, the issue is always it asks a lot of additional knowledge and skills of an audience to vote on the detail, but I agree. And yeah, that's why it shouldn't be an audience voting thing. It should be what we talked about, like the Golden Globes or the Oscars, where it's a peer-reviewed thing. Like, let's have... okay, the problem with it being genuinely a peer review thing is who do you get to grade the rules? Because if you got Paul Grogan to be on that panel of judges, well, Paul Grogan, let's be honest, a lot of the stuff that Paul Grogan writes is going to be up for the award. And so, but I feel like there should be some method of having people who at least maybe aren't writing the rules, but understand games well enough, because I'm not up for any of the best written rules awards, but I think that I would have enough knowledge to be able to say, is this better written than the other? So, Spiel des Jahres has given special prizes for beautiful games, and there's the Golden Feather of Essen for outstanding rulebooks. I was unaware of that. That's awesome.
Yeah, that sounds good.
But they're not awarded regularly. Lots of love, and that's honestly the way I feel. She is a real life friend. We've been to the same basic school. Not sure if she is open to meeting up. She's more of a private person. Okay, fair enough. I'm completely the opposite. I'm like, oh, you know someone in Thailand? Let's meet up. Hey, oh, you live in Liverpool. Well, if you're ever in London, you could come over. And that's like, I'm completely the opposite. So yeah, that's totally fair. So yes, I think Runa's saying that. When Runa says I get that, I assume Runa means just because of the amount of sharing that I do on this stream. But yeah, Timea, I will share all your links on the all the channels, although it's already up on the YouTube thing, but for anyone who's not seen them. So what else would you like to... Feel free to say anything else, but as we finish up, I will say firstly, thank you very much to everyone, especially Timea. Thank you also everyone who's been watching. You are all wonderful, lovely people. I really appreciate all the comments, all the input, all the thoughts, the provocational thoughts. And now this is the final wrap up where I say, over to you. What are you up to? You can share anything you want to. So what would you like to share? What are you excited to do? What are you currently working on, Timea?
So I'm working on my next study, and it's going to be... I cannot say too much about it because I reckon some people might end up as participants from here. But I am looking for participants, and it's going to be a lockdown study. So basically what happens is has to be 2 people living at the same address who are able to play together. And I send you a package containing a game. You get to keep the game. And I also send you...
game?
It's Fuse. Also, the requirement is you haven't played Fuse yet. So
Fuse, F-U-S-E, yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you haven't played Fuse and you have someone else living with you who can play a game with you in lockdown, basically you get a game and you get the tracker that tracks your biosignals. It's one of those studies where we measure not just what you subjectively experience, but we're trying to measure what you objectively experience as well. The tracker needs to be sent back, but everything is sent through DPD collection. So, well, you don't have to be living together as long as you can meet without any issues or risks, then it's fine. So yeah, it's up to you. If you have someone who can come over and willing to be playing, then it's fine. So that's our next project. We've organized most of it. So we have the games, we have the trackers, and we have some participants already. I think we need maybe, I don't even know, 2 more groups maybe, I think. So that's about 4 people.
Wow. Well, I think we could get you that today. Like, say it sounds like they're up for it. And when do you need to be done by?
That's a good question. I think we will start in February. So currently we are having an ethical clearance submitted. So you have to do this with every study. You write an ethical clearance to make sure that you do everything ethically. And then we will start negotiating times, because this is going to be a bit tricky because of the postage. So the package is picked up from my address and it's there the next day at yours. Then we do the study and then they collect it the next day. So it's going to be 1 week per participant.
Is it possible for someone living in Leipzig to be involved?
Where, sorry?
Leipzig, Germany.
That is a bit, I would say in this time, no, because we've got funding for UK postage. But if you live in Scotland or Ireland, it's fine. We have so there is 1 participant already who lives in Ireland. So we have that postage covered, and we have space for 1 more person who's not living in UK mainland, but maybe in Scotland.
That is unfortunate because Tate is based in Leipzig. But
we will have more studies in the future, and some of them might be more interview based. So I will keep, every time we have one, we'll keep posting people about them. So this one is going to be UK only because of the price of the collection service, because we don't want you to need to collect the postage. So it's going to your door. And also because the equipment we're sending is quite sensitive. So we need to make sure that it gets there and then gets back to us in safety. And also, I think if there is anyone in the audience maybe who's from a more diverse background.
Does Fuse only work? Does it have to be 2 people or can it be 3 people?
It has to be 2 people in this case because we want every group to have the same conditions. So that's important for the research part. We want to make sure that everything is the same as much as we can control it. Otherwise, yes, you can play Fuse 3 or 4, but when we designed the study, it was easier to find groups of people where it's 2 people living at the same address in lockdown than more than 2. So in this case, yes, it's 2.
I mean, when I expect to be back in London at the end of the month, and yeah, I would be up for that. And
yeah, that would be nice.
If anyone else watching is based in the UK and lives with someone else and you would like a free copy of Fuse, as long as you haven't already played it, and you'd like to be part of this board game based research, which it's really interesting because I think part of the reason why we've had so much video game research but not board game research is just because there's more money in video games, let's be honest. Yeah, sure. Maybe Alex is interested, or maybe someone else, some other so-and-so. But so that sounds super exciting. Runa is going to be watching more streams today and being creative in some manner. Runa, I know, does a lot of embroidery and painting and lots of lovely things. Runa is not sure if they want to stream today. We'll need to do some chores and set up some eating ideas for the coming week. I hope that all goes well. And yeah, I'm going to be myself streaming again tomorrow. I'm going to be meeting Rita Model. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Rita can tell me. It's a German name. The designer of Men at Work. Really excited to have them on, just meeting and chatting about a few different topics. Then in the evening, I'm going to be going back to my usual Tuesday evening playing things. So maybe I'll see Runa for a wee bit before then. I'm also going to try and have dinner with the family before then. But, oh, sorry, not embroidery. Runa does crochet.
Oh, I haven't tried that yet. It's really interesting.
Let's sing a song of motivation. Come on, Xate, you can do it. Don't let your post be too late. Come on, Xate, you can do it. Don't give in to hate. Come on, Xate, I think you are awesome and you can totally do this and get the post. Come on, or send off the post, I don't know. Or if you want to do it tomorrow, that's probably also fine. I mean, sometimes it's okay to say, you know what, I'm going to do, it's already a month late, says Xate. Well, if you do it tomorrow, like, that's probably also fine. If you are just not feeling it, sometimes you need to be kind to yourself. Anyway, walking, says Runa should do walking, all of us. You know, some sorts of exercise. And yeah, Runa also does painting and random silly crafts. But is there anything else that you're looking forward to? Where do you like to be found or anything? I realize that I probably should have put your Twitter on here as well, which I forgot about.
I am actually most active on Twitter, which is the only social media I actively use. I have Instagram as well, but I only use it to find coffee roasters I want to order coffee from. So Twitter definitely, or my website. Although my website is mostly about music, so if anyone is interested in that, maybe. The Iggy website is more about my research topic, and then the last one is the paper I wrote about immersion. It is quite long, so I don't expect anyone to read it fully. But if you're interested in board game immersion, I think it's... I'm saying this because I've worked on it with other people. I think it's quite a good paper.
And Runa does mention that if you want to learn crocheting from Runa, then Runa has a Teach Me redeem on the channel.
Nice.
Or maybe you could do some sorts of thing for the subscription. I know some people, instead of channel points, they allow some people to do it for subscriptions. But
cool.
Team Amigurumi Meeple? I don't know what amigurumi means. I genuinely do not think you sent me chocolates, Xate. I don't know why. Now I'm genuinely confused. You don't even know my address. You don't know where I am, so... Yeah. But, it's a kind of crochet. Amigurumi. Okay, there we go.
I like that. Maybe I will need a new hobby next month or so.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to do a quick shout out to?
I don't think so. I think I've pretty much talked about everything I can share about myself. But I have to say, I'm really thankful for you to invite me today. I felt amazing. And I'm really grateful for people who came and watched. I didn't expect anyone to watch me talk about myself for 2 hours or even longer. So I do definitely feel honored for that.
Oh, well, what's that? It says, you don't know that. Maybe I am friends with your parents. I am not, but I could be. I am pet friendly. Parents like me. How do you even get to... That would be kind of creepy. And Runa does say, you are lovely, Timea.
Good point.
But I'm going to do a quick look onto Twitch to see if there's anyone playing anything or chatting. Who's currently live? Oh, Lundi is doing art. Now I need to mute that. Oh, Erin Shea's live. Oh, Amadeus. I really like Amadeus, and I've not popped in there for a while. So if people want to listen to some excellent piano music, then check out Amadeus. Amadeus is like the most accomplished, like, classical style musician that I've seen. Like, I know there's other people who are amazing at the live learns who just listen to something and then they play it at exactly the same time, which is, wow, this is mind-blowing. But Amadeus just, I don't know, I like the chat. But yeah, anyone who wants to stick around for that raid. And Runa, no, this is the TTTT show. Timea's terrifically timely Twitch show. So if you want to listen to something, then on Twitch, if you can copy paste that. Oh wait, why is the Tomb Raid not working? Is that not working for other people? But we are always surprised that the daily host keeps having Bez on as a guest, says Xate. If you want to copy paste some of the raid message, then feel free to do so. You can chuck some love hearts as we jump in. Otherwise, there is only one thing that we have left to say. And that one thing left is, of course, the saddest moment, but it is bye. Bye, 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 bye. This is the goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. Now it's time to go. Bye, 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 bye. It's only bye, bye for now. Bye, 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 bye. Never gonna let you down. Never gonna give you up. Never gonna make you cry. Never gonna do. Anyway, bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Oh, and I'm just going to let the timer go. So in 20 seconds or something. Bye-bye, 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 bye-bye. Bye, bye-bye. Bye.